Chapter 584. There were two people coming from afar. The one leading the way was Yang Yao, the one who led Zhang Xiaohua into the fragrance cult. The one walking behind Yang Yao was the legendary genius from the Rejuvenation Valley. Well, the little medicine boy of the Rejuvenation Valley was now an outer disciple of the Wuming Hall of the fragrance cult. As for his name, Zhang Xiaohua could not remember it clearly, but the face in her divine sense. Zhang Xiaohua had seen it before. Wasn't he the patrolling disciple who cheated Zhang Xiaohua of the dragon scale fruit on the first day of Zhang Xiaohua's arrival in the fragrance cult? For a moment, Zhang Xiaohua felt a chill in her heart. What kind of quality was this? The pride of the pill-expanding hall? How could he snatch the herb from a medicine boy? Not to mention other things. Just this point alone made Zhang Xiaohua look down on him. Until now, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. No wonder she felt strange at that time. The dragon scale fruit was rare. How could a patrolling disciple of the Wuming Hall know about it? If it was him, naturally it would not be strange. Not to mention his character. This medicine boy of the pill-expanding hall still had the basic professional quality. When Bai Huan heard Qinfeng Xiao ask him to take Zhang Xiaohua to the inner hall to find clothes, he was unhappy at first. Although he didn't say anything, he didn't move at all. He just stood there and stretched his neck, his eyes full of stars, and said in a low voice, "Oh, this senior brother Liu is really a master of martial arts. You see, I haven't seen him for several years, but he still looks the same as before. Oh no, look at his eyes like lightning and his steps like a tiger or a dragon. He really has the demeanor of a master. Even Headmaster Qin can't compare to him, even Master Qinfeng Xiao." When Zhang Xiaohua heard the words senior brother Liu, she immediately thought of the Lu Lihong mentioned by Yang Yao. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. Although Lu Lihong and Yang Yao were close, they were still 10 feet away. Moreover, it was dusk. It was the most difficult to see people clearly. Zhang Xiaohua's ears and eyes were sharp, but she could only see roughly. How could Bai Huan see clearly? So Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "So, senior brother, Bai admire senior brother Liu so much?" Bai Huan ignored him and only looked from afar and said, "It's not just me. Senior brother Liu is simply the idol of all the disciples of Tianmu Peak. As long as senior brother Liu is mentioned, even Headmaster Qin is full of praise. Oh, by the way, don't be fooled by Headmaster Chen's extreme dislike of the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley. Senior brother Liu is definitely an exception. Junior brother in. When you see senior brother Liu later, you have to get close to him. He is the pride of your Rejuvenation Valley, a genius of hundreds of years." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she secretly curled her lips and thought, "Senior brother Liu's lightness skill is only slightly better than Great King Kong Zhou Shuming. How can he be called a master, not to mention a genius? He even snatched my dragon scale fruit, and he still wants me to get close to him?" However, he immediately had a good impression of Qinfeng Xiao. Perhaps Qinfeng Xiao took what he said about becoming an outer disciple seriously. When he saw Lu Lihong coming over, Qinfeng Xiao hurriedly called him over. Presumably, Qinfeng Xiao wanted Lu Lihong to ask more questions about this disciple of the Pill Sprouting Hall who had successfully broken through the Pill Sprouting Hall in the past, so that Lu Lihong would have more confidence. But did she want to be an outer disciple? Did she want to patrol the mountain for the fragrance cult? Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said to Bai Huan, who was immersed in admiration of his idol, "Senior brother Bai, you go ahead. I will find the inner hall myself." When Bai Huan heard this, he was overjoyed and said, Good, good. This is what you said. Then I will go and welcome senior brother Liu first. You quickly change into new clothes and come over to show your nose." After that, he walked away without asking Zhang Xiaohua if she knew where the inner hall was or pointing the direction to the inner hall for Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing Bai Huan leave in a hurry, Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose and turned to enter the courtyard. Anyway, he didn't intend to change his clothes. Why would he look for the inner hall? At this time, the courtyard was empty. There was no one. But the courtyard was different from usual. Although it was empty, it didn't mean that there was nothing. The courtyard, which was usually empty, had been filled with rows and rows of small stools, which were very neat. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. Looking up again, at the end of the courtyard in the hall, there was a slightly high platform. There were several tables and several chairs on the high platform. The high platform was brightly lit, which was reflected on the long red cloth above. On the cloth, there was a row of handsome characters, which was former core of the Pill Expanding Hall. Today elite of the Wuming Hall. Lu Lihong's report on his past excellent deeds. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua touched his nose again. Alas, he had touched his nose countless times in a short while. He thought to himself, could it be that you really can't judge a book by its cover? Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously had a trace of expectation in his heart. Zhang Xiaohua looked left and right. His body didn't seem to be moving at all. Instead, he floated up like a breeze and flew straight to a dark corner. It was the new imperial wind technique. Unfortunately, he had only flown one zhang and was less than 3 feet above the ground when his body staggered. He had already lost the vigor of the imperial wind technique and fell down like a rock. Cough, cough. Zhang Xiaohua looked around. Fortunately, there was no one around. He didn't embarrass himself. He cast a spell and escaped to a corner. Then he jumped onto the wall and looked at the lively scene outside. Not far away, Yang Yao and Lu Lihong had already walked together with Chen Fengxiao and Wu Zhoushu's group. Chen Fengxiao raised his hands with an enthusiastic look. When they got closer, he immediately cupped his hands together and said, Tianmu Peak's Pill Opening Hall's Grass Division disciple Chen Fengxiao welcomes the famous Wuming Hall's outstanding outer disciple Lu Lihong, junior brother Lu Lihong. Yang Yao was walking in front of Lu Lihong and was about to return the greeting. However, after hearing Chen Fengxiao's words, he immediately moved to the side and let Lu Lihong pass. Lu Lihong, on the other hand, acted like an expert. He took a step forward and cupped his hands together. He said humbly, Senior Brother Chen, you're too kind. Even though we're not from the same place, weren't we all disciples of the Pill Opening Hall back then? What outer disciples? What outstanding disciples? It's just a fleeting cloud. Only our brotherhood is real. Chen Fengxiao gave him a thumbs up and said, Junior Brother Lu is indeed extraordinary. Even at this point, you still haven't forgotten your past. I'm truly impressed. Then, Chen Fengxiao took a step to the side and bowed towards Yang Yao. Martial Uncle Yang, you've worked hard to bring Junior Brother Lu here. You've added quite a bit of glory to our Tianmu Peak. At the same time, Wu Zhoushu also walked in front of Lu Lihong with a spring breeze smile. He cupped his hands together and greeted Lu Lihong. Yang Yao, on the other hand, was still smiling. He said to Chen Fengxiao, Sai, I have a hard life. Back then, I brought you back to the fragrant religion. In the blink of an eye, dozens of years have passed. Look at your achievements today, then look at me. I'm ashamed. Chun Feng smiled warmly as he patted Yang Yao's shoulder and said, Martial Uncle Yang is a guiding sign for the fragrant religion. I don't know how many disciples have joined the fragrant religion under your guidance. This contribution of yours is something I admire greatly, but no matter how hard I try, I will never be able to learn from you. Then he took Yang Yao's hand and said affectionately, I heard that the last time Martial Uncle left the valley was your last time. In the future, you can enjoy your life in the fragrant religion. I wonder what arrangements Martial Uncle has. Our Tianmu Peak lacks a person of virtue and prestige like Martial Uncle. If Martial Uncle is willing, why don't you come to my Tianmu Peak? I'll immediately let Martial Uncle take over my position. Yang Yao waved his hand. No, you and Martial Nephew Lu are both heroes. How can I compare to you? My old bones should just stay in the White Mountain Peak and bask in the sun. Sigh, even if I wanted to come to Tianmu Peak, would the Hall Master be willing to replace you? Chen Fengxiao smiled like a flower and shook Yang Yao's hand. You are the Hall Master's treasure. How could he be willing to put you so far away? You must be in a more important place in the hall. Yang Yao chuckled and continued to say some irrelevant things. On the side, Wu Zhouxiu, who had finished exchanging greetings, also walked over and continued to exchange greetings with Yang Yao. The other 16 men surrounded Lu Lihong like stars surrounding the moon, asking all sorts of questions at once. Only not far behind them, a group of young medicine apprentices were working hard to beat the gongs and drums, swaying the garland, their voices somewhat hoarse. Welcome, welcome, warm welcome. The sound reverberated through the mountainside of Tianmu Peak. After a while, the two groups of people finished exchanging greetings. Some of the Pill Expanding Hall disciples who had been admiring them for a long time also seemed to be eager to try. Lu Lihong smiled and said to Qin Feng Xiao, "The Pill Expanding Hall is still the best. This is my home. Every time I come back, I feel the warmth of family. However, the brothers are really too enthusiastic. I'm afraid." Qin Feng Xiao obviously knew what he meant. He turned around and raised his hand. "Fellow junior brothers, don't be anxious. It's windy and cold here. Let junior brother Lu enter the courtyard first. In a while, it will be junior brother Lu's first report. Let's go with him and reminisce about the years when he fought in the Pill Expanding Hall. After this, let's have a good exchange with junior brother Lu and learn from him. In the future, junior brother Lu will be our guiding light," Qin Feng Xiao said a lot. Only then did the disciples quiet down and make a path. Lu Lihong had a smile on his face as he walked in front of the crowd, waving his hand as he walked. Qin Feng Xiao and Wu Zhouxiu followed behind him, clapping with a smile on their faces. Yang Yao walked behind Qin Feng Xiao and the others, accompanied by Zhou Shuming and the others. The disciples on both sides of the aisle cheered and stretched out their hands, wanting to get closer to the former elite of the Pill Repository Hall. The medicine boys behind the disciples were still tirelessly waving their garlands and drums, their little faces full of excitement. Their eyes were peeking through the gaps between the disciples, hoping to see something. Unfortunately, they could not see anything. All they could see was a group of messy backs. -3. Chapter 585. Everyone entered the courtyard and saw a group of disciples sitting on small stools that had been neatly arranged in the courtyard. The medicine boys who were playing music to welcome them also followed in and stood behind the disciples. Zhang Xiaohua took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention and quietly slipped down the wall and sat behind the medicine boys. Lu Lihong sat in the middle of the high platform in the yard, accompanied by Qin Feng Xiao and Wu Zhouxiu. Yang Yao and a dozen other people sat slightly behind him. When everyone was seated, Qin Feng Xiao picked up a teacup and invited Lu Lihong to drink. He then said to the disciples below the stage, "Fellow junior brothers, I believe you all know that the person on the stage is the pride of our Pill Repository Hall. He is also an outstanding disciple of the Wuming Hall, junior brother Lu Lihong. I don't need to go into details about his experience. The most well-known thing is that, as a disciple of the Grass Division of our Pill Repository Hall, he passed the outer disciple assessment and successfully entered the Wuming Hall. He became an elite compound disciple that was highly valued by the Wuming Hall. I know that you have admired junior brother Lu for a long time, so you united with Wu Dalong of the Pill Department to invite junior brother Lu. You all know that junior brother Lu is very busy in Wuming Hall. He not only has to shoulder his own responsibilities in Wuming Hall, but also some tasks that other disciples can't complete. That is to use his experience as a disciple of Pill Expanding Hall to share the responsibilities of herbs and elixirs. Therefore, junior brother Lu can take time out of his busy schedule to come to Tianmu Peak and guide the work of the Grass Department and Pill Department of our Pill Expanding Hall. For this, I would like to express our deep gratitude on behalf of everyone. Well, let's give the time to our long-awaited junior brother Lu to talk about his growth experience in Pill Expanding Hall and his struggle in Wuming Hall." Before Chen Fengxiao's voice died away, there was a thunderous applause from below the platform. Lu Lihong stood up and modestly said, "Senior brother Qin is too serious. I don't have much experience. Only some thoughts that I want to share with everyone." This is something that can be replicated. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, or maybe a few years later, one of the juniors here will pass the examination and walk beside me." As he spoke, he turned his head to look at Qinfeng Shao and said, "Actually, to be honest, you have a very good template beside you. As far as I know, senior brother Qin also fought like me in the past. It's just that senior brother Qin wasn't as lucky as me. As for me, I just passed by luck." Qinfeng Shao immediately waved his hand and said, "Don't. A defeated general doesn't need to be brave. If what junior martial brother Lu said is true, many of us here can learn from him. For example, Wu Dalong, junior martial brother Zhou, and the others." When Wu Zhouxiu and the others heard this, they also nodded with a smile. Lu Lihong saw this and smiled. "Yes, that's right. Actually, there are things in this world that are difficult and easy. If you do it, the difficulties will be easy. If you don't do it, the difficulties will be difficult. Junior martial brother isn't talented, but I'm willing to combine the insights of the past 10 years with these philosophies to share with everyone." With that, Lu Lihong continued to speak with assurance on the high platform. He truly had the bearing of a grandmaster. Zhang Xiaohua hid behind many apprentices and didn't release her divine sense. She just closed her eyes and listened. Although Lu Lihong's words were very right, and some of them even touched Zhang Xiaohua's heart, she just couldn't listen. It was like a very funny voice. Every time she heard it, it was very pleasant to listen to. Of course, Lu Lihong's sanctimonious patrolling appearance would appear in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. "Tisk!" Involuntarily, Zhang Xiaohua muttered. "What you say can't compare to what you say. How can you convince me?" In fact, the most important thing was that everyone in the Pill Tower Hall described Lu Lihong as a rare genius in hundreds of years. Not only was he proficient in medicinal herbs and pills, he was also proficient in martial arts. However, in Zhang Xiaohua's eyes, this was just a child's play. That day, Lu Lihong swindled the dragon scale fruit and used his qinggong to leave. Zhang Xiaohua was secretly surprised in her heart that this patrolling disciple's qinggong was so poor. Now that she thought about it, qinggong required internal strength. Although Lu Lihong was talented, his internal strength cultivation was half a beat slower than others. Therefore, in terms of qinggong, he was very lacking. Since this was the case, how could Zhang Xiaohua take him seriously? Then, how could she take his words to heart? Of course, there was another point. Although Zhang Xiaohua acted in a low-key manner, she was after all an 18-year-old young man. Deep in her heart, there was a kind of pride. She saw that the person in front of her was obviously inferior to her, but received much more praise than she did. She could pinch him to death with one finger, but she could not show it. It was like casting pearls before swine. Naturally, she had a feeling of injustice. Isn't it just because you don't have a recommendation? If the disciples of the Pill Tower Hall knew my methods, how could you have a place? Haha! It seemed that even Qi practitioners of the Celestial Way could not help but have the resentment of man fights for a breath. Buddha receives a stick of incense. However, Zhang Xiaohua forgot that if he used his methods, not only would the Pill Tower Hall be shocked, but the whole incense cult would be shocked as well. Yes, the whole Jianghu would be shocked. Did he dare to show off? At this time, Lu Lihong on the stage said a few words, refining pills? You just need to calm your mind. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead and jumped up from the ground. Oh no! Why am I wasting time here with them? It's just a so-called report. It's not like I want to see them. My furnace of bone condensation pills is more important. Who wants to listen to his nagging? Oh, right, how can this guy refine pills? Didn't they say that grass sect disciples can't lend out their pill rooms? However, in a hurry, Zhang Xiaohua did not have time to think carefully. She released her divine sense. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, she made a hand seal and directly escaped. She did not show her head and directly went to the pill room at the top of the mountain. Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation of the Imperial Wind technique was not good, but she was very good at escaping through the earth. Not long after, she returned to the pill room. The first thing she did when she entered the pill room was to use her divine sense to explore the pill furnaces. She saw that the 10 or so medicinal liquids in the 8 formations were slowly rotating, and from time to time, impurities like flying ash would be extracted. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua feel relieved. When Zhang Xiaohua sat down, she was slightly amused. Although the bone condensation pill was precious, it was still a low-level pill. She had successfully refined the meridian soothing pill the first time. Although this was the first time she had used the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace, it had been refined and was different from the one in Rejuvenation Valley. If there was a connection between her mind and blood, there would not be too big of a difference. Her worries were a bit unnecessary. Since there were no problems with the bone condensation pill, Zhang Xiaohua was in no hurry to return to the mountainside. Although Lu Lihong's report was good, it did not interest Zhang Xiaohua in the slightest. There was no reason for her to waste her time there. Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal and floated up. Unexpectedly, she was cultivating the Imperial Wind technique in the pill room again. After an unknown amount of time, she gradually made some progress with the Imperial Wind technique. Zhang Xiaohua landed on the ground to rest for a while. However, she immediately thought of the banquet at the mountainside and knew something was wrong. She turned around and left. Sure enough, when Zhang Xiaohua arrived at the entrance of the courtyard, the high platform had been demolished. The stools on the ground were long gone. Under the bright lights, there were more than 10 square tables. Many delicacies had already been placed on the tables. The disciples were all eating and drinking. The young medicine apprentices, who looked like they had worked the hardest, were nowhere to be seen. It was unknown where they had been sent. In the main hall of the courtyard, there are also 4 large round tables. Lu Lihong sat at the head, accompanied by Qin Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxiu. Below him were great guardian warrior Zhou Shuming, great Arhat Lu Fengming, and the others. At the table next to him was Yang Yao, who was also accompanied by several guardian warriors and arhats. The other 2 tables were also occupied by the other members of the pill and grass divisions. At this time, Lu Lihong's face was red from drinking. He raised his wine cup and said something to Qin Fengxiao. Yang Yao was also the same. Although he was not sitting at the head table, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. This made Zhang Xiaohua a little puzzled. The pill expanding hall and Wuming hall of the fragrance cult were the same. Why did the disciples of the pill expanding hall feel inferior to Wuming hall? Could it be because Wuming hall was an outer disciple? But thinking back to that time in the Misty School, he Tianshu, as a disciple of the pill expanding hall, seemed to be the same as the other disciples. Seeing that everyone had their own seats, it seemed that there was no need for him to appear. Zhang Xiaohua had the intention to return to the top of the mountain. He was not sure whether Yang Yao came to Tianmu Peak to see him or not. If he went up for no reason, what if Yang Yao gave him a cold shoulder? Wouldn't that be very embarrassing? And he remembered that on the way to the fragrance cult, Yang Yao repeatedly told him not to let the people of the pill expanding hall know that he was taking care of him. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua was about to leave. At this time a voice sounded, "Junior brother, please wait." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He turned around and saw an unfamiliar disciple running from afar, sweating profusely. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua's face, his face lit up and he said, "Junior brother Rin, it's really you. Io, where did you go?" After senior brother Lu's report, Headmaster Chen asked senior brother Bai and us to look for you, but we couldn't find you in the entire courtyard. Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, senior brother. I went to the inner courtyard to look for clothes, but I got lost. I just came out from the back. I'm regretting that I didn't hear senior brother Lu's report." "Io, then you lost a lot, senior brother Lu." This senior brother Zhang Xiaohua had never met was about to say something, but he was interrupted by a call. When Zhang Xiaohua looked up, wasn't it Bai Huan? He saw that Bai Huan's face was also covered in sweat. She hurriedly walked over and said, "We finally found junior brother in. Headmaster Chin ordered us to let you in quickly. Let's go. Oh, why haven't you changed your clothes? Zhang Xiaohua spread his hands and said, I couldn't find the inner courtyard, so I couldn't find my clothes. Then what should we do? Why don't I take you to the inner courtyard to change your clothes? Bai Huan didn't know what to do at the moment. -3. Chapter 586. Zhang Xiaohua didn't bother to change her clothes. She just smiled and said, Forget it, senior brother Bai. He's just meeting a former senior brother of our sect. Why do you have to be like this? Bai Huan argued. But this is senior brother Lu Lihong. He's different from others. Besides, Headmaster Chen has also instructed me. Forget it. Then I'd better go back to the top of the mountain. Zhang Xiaohua pretended to leave. Bai Huan immediately grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's clothes and said anxiously, How can you do that? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't want to change into new clothes, the disciple next to her came up with an idea and said, How about this, junior brother Bai? Just say that you haven't found clothes suitable for junior brother Rin. That works. Bai Huan was a little dumbfounded. Zhang Xiaohua nodded repeatedly. This works, absolutely. Okay then. Bai Huan helplessly walked into the courtyard with Zhang Xiaohua. At the banquet, Yang Yao was listening attentively to what Arhut Zhang Xiaohua was saying. From time to time, he squinted his eyes and nodded frequently. When he was talking, he couldn't help but applaud. At this moment, he looked up and saw Bai Huan walking in with Zhang Xiaohua. His eyes immediately lit up, and the smile on his face became wider. He stared at the slowly approaching Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua had been looking at the banquet. When she saw Yang Yao looking at her, she also smiled and nodded at Yang Yao. Although she was behind Bai Huan, her footsteps quickened. After entering the hall, Bai Huan went to Qin Fengxiao. At this time, Qin Fengxiao was holding a wine glass, accompanied by Wu Zhouxiu. He was talking to Lu Lihong with his head lowered. Bai Huan whispered, Headmaster Qin, I found Ren Xiaoyao. Well, why did it take so long? Where did he go? Qin Fengxiao frowned and looked up unhappily. However, before Bai Huan could explain, Qin Fengxiao said to Zhang Xiaohua, who was behind Bai Huan, in a clear voice, Little brother, come here quickly. Let me introduce you. Before he could finish his words, his expression changed slightly. He saw Zhang Xiaohua enter the hall. She smiled and nodded slightly at Qin Feng, then turned around and walked towards Yang Yao. When she arrived in front of him, she bowed deeply and said, Martial Uncle Yang, long time no see. Are you well? Zhang Xiaohua's actions were out of the expectations of all the disciples in the hall. Not to mention Qin Fengxiao, even Yang Yao was caught off guard. Yang Yao hurriedly got up and helped Zhang Xiaohua up. Martial niece Rin, you're too polite. We've only been apart for a dozen days. Everything is fine. Then he took Zhang Xiaohua's hand and came to the main table. Come, let me introduce you to our distinguished guest of the Pill Repository Hall. He's also a senior of the Rejuvenation Valley. He's now a famous outer disciple of the Wuming Hall, senior brother Lu Lihong. Lu Lihong was talking to Qin Fengxiao just now, so he did not notice anything. It was not until Zhang Xiaohua walked into the hall and Qin Fengxiao introduced her that he clearly saw Zhang Xiaohua's face. In an instant, his expression changed slightly, but it soon returned to normal. He was also surprised when he saw Zhang Xiaohua walk over to greet Yang Yao. His eyes revealed a look of interest. Now that Yang Yao introduced her, he hurriedly got up. His face flushed with surprise again, and he said, Oh, this is the new medicine apprentice of the fragrant cult this year. Haha, I've long heard of him, but I didn't expect to see him today. It's really better to see once than to hear 100 times. Then he took Zhang Xiaohua's hand affectionately, as if he had never seen her before. Zhang Xiaohua pulled her hand away and saluted again. So it's senior brother Lu. I've long heard of your great name. Now that I see you, I admire you even more. You're just like your name. Extraordinary, extraordinary. Qin Fengxiao, who was standing to the side, secretly gave Zhang Xiaohua a thumbs up in his heart. This is a real man who doesn't forget his roots. Then he patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "This is also the most talented medicine apprentice of our Tianmu Peak in recent years. Although he's still young, he vaguely has the demeanor of junior brother Lu in the past." Lu Lihong looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said with a smile, "That's right. Junior brother Rin is the prospective son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley's Valley Master Nia. How can his martial arts be lacking?" When he said this, Qin Feng Xiao and the rest frowned slightly. Even the other disciples in the main hall had strange expressions on their faces. The way they looked at Zhang Xiaohua had changed. Everyone naturally knew that Zhang Xiaohua came from Rejuvenation Valley. However, the fact that he was the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley was considered a secret. It wasn't suitable for many people to know about it. Of course, he was different from ordinary medicine apprentices. The others also knew about this. However, they also knew what they should know and what they shouldn't know. Therefore, they wouldn't ask at all. Now that Lu Lihong had said it in front of them, he directly broke the window paper. How could they not see Zhang Xiaohua in a new light? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Lihong's face was full of regret. His expression changed faster than flipping a book. He slapped his own mouth and said, "Ayo, junior brother, and look at me. I've lost my virtue after drinking. Please forgive me." In fact, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care about this. She hurriedly smiled and said, "Senior brother Lu is really a person who knows everything. This little secret of mine is known by senior brother from Wuming Hall. I really admire you." Zhang Xiaohua didn't care, but Yang Yao couldn't not care. He was the one who brought Zhang Xiaohua from Rejuvenation Valley. Therefore, he looked at Qin Feng Xiao and Wu Zhouxiu as if nothing had happened. The two of them also understood and said with a smile, "Although junior brother Lu is now an outer disciple of Wuming Hall, he used to call us brothers in Pill Expanding Hall. Since we are brothers, we naturally speak behind closed doors. Only we brothers know about junior brother Lu's drunken words just now. If others know about it, then, before they finished speaking, everyone already knew what they meant. Naturally, they wouldn't let them finish their words." Zhou Shuming and the others raised their cups and said, "Head Master Chen and Wu Dalong, don't worry. Even if the walls have ears, we brothers will cut off those ears. Come, cheers." Lu Lihong also raised his cup and said, "Come, junior brother Rin. Senior brother apologizes to you." This. Zhang Xiaohua was a little hesitant. Qin Feng Xiao, who was next to her, hurriedly explained, "Junior brother Lu, please don't blame us. Junior brother Rin is still young and can't drink wine. Why don't we substitute tea for wine?" Lu Lihong said with a smile, "Junior brother Rin is taller than me when standing in front of me. How can he be young? Come, you must drink wine. Only then can you be a real man and a real son-in-law." These words were a little vulgar, but they were exactly what the others were thinking. Zhou Shuming and the others all roared with laughter. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she smiled and said, "Since senior brother Lu insists on letting me drink a cup, I can't be ungrateful to senior brother. However, this is the first time I've drunk wine. How about this cup?" Lu Lihong said with a smile, of course. As long as junior brother Ren gives me face, it's fine." Zhang Xiaohua picked up a wine cup from the table and raised it in front of her chest. Lu Lihong said, "Okay." Then he drank it in one gulp, and the others followed suit. Although the Pill Tower Hall's wine wasn't as good as Rejuvenation Valley's 100 Flowers wine, it was still considered an excellent wine. It tasted much better than the Xan Rongang's wine. However, Zhang Xiaohua only drank one cup and didn't drink more. She had already asked for one cup, and Lu Lihong had also agreed. After a few failed attempts to persuade her to drink, everyone didn't force her and sat down. Qin Feng Xiao originally wanted Zhang Xiaohua to sit beside him so that she could be closer to Lu Lihong. However, Zhang Xiaohua said that she had some private matters to discuss with Yang Yao, so she only sat beside Yang Yao. Qin Feng Xiao saw that Lu Lihong only picked up a pair of chopsticks and didn't force him. He followed Wu Zhouxiu and continued to accompany Lu Lihong to drink and chat. When Zhang Xiaohua sat down, Yang Yao's face was filled with joy. He said in a low voice, "Martial nephew Rin, when I sent you to this place, I was worried for many days. Later on, I met the hall master and specially reported to him that I wanted to transfer you back to White Mountain Peak. However, there were some difficulties involved, so I couldn't do it. But now it seems that Martial nephew Rin is like a fish in water here. You're living a free and unfettered life. This makes me feel very gratified and relieved. I was still worried that I would mistreat you and fail to live up to Brother Nia's trust." Gosh, Zhang Xiaohua silently cursed. I've been branded with Rejuvenation Valley's brand. I reckon I won't be able to get rid of the title of son-in-law. However, Yang Yao's words were very sincere and must have come from the bottom of his heart. Zhang Xiaohua picked up the teacup and said, "I can't drink wine. I'll use tea in place of wine. Thank you for your concern, martial uncle." Good, good. Yang Yao smiled and raised his cup. He drank a cup and looked at Zhang Xiaohua with relief, saying, "I heard from you that you displayed great prowess the moment you arrived at Tianmu Peak. You won 3 matches in a row and even defeated martial nephew Zhou in Qinggong. I didn't expect martial nephew Ren's martial arts to be so powerful. It's far beyond my expectations." How could Zhang Xiaohua admit to it? She only smiled and said, "Martial uncle thinks too highly of me. This was all due to head Master Chen's arrangements. I was only very lucky to achieve such a result. Moreover, it was my first time at Tianmu Peak, and my senior martial brothers were not familiar with it. That was why I lost. If we compete again in the future, I won't be so lucky and can only lower my head and admit defeat. Haha, martial nephew is still young. There's still room for improvement in the future. There's no need to fuss over a temporary victory or defeat." Yang Yao comforted, "Oh yes, I heard that you changed all your elixirs to medicinal herbs. Why did you do that?" Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua gave a long sigh and said, "Sigh, martial uncle, please don't mention this matter. Every time you mention this matter, I regret it. You also know that I came from a small sect in Jianghu and have not seen much of the world. I only know that aged medicinal herbs are precious. No matter how many elixirs I have, I won't be able to use them all. Why not exchange them for medicinal herbs? Only after I changed them did I realize that in our pill repository hall, medicinal herbs are like weeds. I still have many medicinal herbs left in a small courtyard." After listening to Zhang Xiaohua's confession, Yang Yao smiled and said, "All the new alchemy apprentices are like this. When they see a medicinal herb, they treat it like a treasure. In fact, they don't know that this kind of herb is everywhere. You are also new here, so you will slowly learn about it in the future. However, exchanging medicinal herbs with medicinal pills, you have suffered a great loss." At this point, Lu Lihong said, "Junior brother Rin, I misspoke after drinking and now I regret it. Can you give me a chance to deal with your herbs as an apology?" -3. Chapter 587. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and stared at Lu Lihong for dozens of seconds. What does this person mean? Just now, you were so obvious about my origin, and now you want to immediately remedy it? Moreover, this medicinal herb is useless in the hands of others, but in my hands, it's something much more precious than a medicinal pill. How can I let you steal my treasure and owe you a favor? How can I let everyone praise you? All right, speaking of snatching my stuff, this guy snatched my dragon scale fruit the first time we met, and now he's still thinking about other herbs? Yes, absolutely not. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was silent, Lu Lihong smiled warmly and said, "What? Junior brother Rin doesn't want to give me face?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, No, these herbs are annoying me to death. I can't throw them away, but I can't keep them either. If senior brother Lu can help me solve them, that would be the best. But, senior brother Lu, I understand junior brother Ren's meaning. I also know that junior brother Rin showed off his invincible strength and won 3 battles. Speaking of which, I have also heard about the battles on Tianmu Peak. But when I was in the Pill Formation Hall, I was always in the White Mountain Peak. Later on, when I entered the outer sect, I went to the Wuming Hall and had no chance to come to Tianmu Peak. Now that I heard junior brother's spirit in the battles, I couldn't help but feel itchy. How about this? I will take out. Without waiting for Lu Lihong to finish, Zhang Xiaohua interrupted him and said with a surprised expression, "What? Senior brother, Lu, wants to take out 150 taels of gold to exchange for herbs with me? Ahem, ahem." Lu Lihong's face flushed red, but it was covered by alcohol and couldn't be seen. He awkwardly said, "Junior brother Rin is very generous and won 150 taels of gold in one go. But junior brother thinks even head Master Qin and Wu Dalong don't have that much gold. How can a poor outer sect disciple like me have that much gold?" Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of disappointment, but her eyes were full of eagerness. She said, "It's fine if you don't have gold. Even if it's 150 taels of gold, junior brother is willing to exchange." Lu Lihong almost choked when he heard Zhang Xiaohua mention 150 gold taels. He clenched his teeth and finally resisted the urge to go berserk. He maintained his amiable tone. "Little brother is really a bit greedy. Of course, this is the nature of a man. Ha. But since little brother didn't get the 150 gold taels pill that day and instead exchanged it for some worthless herbs, then these herbs can't be counted as 150 gold taels. Sai, isn't this nonsense? I know you can't take it out, so I'm forcing you." Zhang Xiaohua's heart was beating rapidly, and then she pretended to be puzzled and said, "Then senior brother Lu's meaning is?" Lu Lihong was speechless, and he snappily said, "I understand junior brother Ren's feelings, but you have to wait for me to make things clear." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's junior brother's fault, junior brother's fault. Senior brother Lu, please explain clearly." Qin Feng smiled and toasted Lu Lihong with a cup of wine. Lu Lihong then said slowly, "I've been looking forward to Tianmu Peak's gambling match for a long time, but I've never had the chance to participate. Now that I'm an outer sanctum disciple, I'm even more helpless. Now that I've met junior brother Rin, I can't help but be secretly delighted. Why don't we use junior brother Ren's medicinal herbs as the stakes and have a gambling match? Although I can't officially participate in Tianmu Peak's gambling match, if I can compete with junior brother Rin, I'll have no regrets in life." "What, have no regrets in this life?" Zhang Xiaohua's head was full of black lines, and she secretly said, "It's better to die without regrets." Hearing this, the people around them were slightly shocked. After all, Lu Lihong was an outer disciple, and a disciple who had fought his way out of the Dan opening hall. His martial arts were obviously superior to the other disciples of the Dan opening hall. Now he wanted to compete with Zhang Xiaohua, who had just joined the Dan opening hall. Wasn't this an adult playing with a child? But then, everyone came to a realization. Didn't he just say that he wanted to make up for his previous mistakes and help Zhang Xiaohua recover some of her losses? As a result, Lu Lihong's image in everyone's hearts was a bit higher than before. If possible, Chen Fengxiao wanted to hold another advance report. "Yes, if possible, I'll record it in the Grass Division's journal. The title will be Senior Brother of the Dan Opening Hall Guides Junior Brother Later. Highlights Grass Division's unity and friendship." Chen Fengxiao thought excitedly. Zhang Xiaohua's face was also excited, and she cried out, "Ayo, that's great. But senior brother Lu, what kind of pill will you use for the bet?" "But then," she said somewhat dejectedly, "but senior brother Lu's martial arts are so high, how can I be your opponent?" Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua agreed, Lu Lihong took out a jade bottle from his bosom and said, "This is a Yuhuandin pill that I occasionally got from the hall leader. Although it's not much, it can be considered rare in the outer sect. I don't know if junior brother Rin thinks it's suitable." This Zhang Xiaohua didn't know how to answer. To be honest, she didn't want to exchange at all, not to mention that she still had 4 yuan pill in her bosom. Zhang Xiaohua didn't say anything, but the people around them were in an uproar. Thinking back to that day at Zhoushu, the yuan pill was already worth 30 taels of gold for Zhang Xiaohua, let alone the real thing. Especially Qin Fengxiao, his eyes almost reached out a hand. He understood that Zhang Xiaohua didn't know much about the yuan pill of the Chuanqiang cult, so it was impossible for her to understand the importance of this yuan pill. So if Zhang Xiaohua won and exchanged a pile of useless herbs for this yuan pill that was even more precious than gold, it was hard to say who would get the yuan pill in the end. Well, there was nothing hard to say. Qin Fengxiao was the head of the grass department at Tianmu Peak, so this yuan pill would definitely fall into his hands. Zhang Xiaohua was just a medicine boy with an unstable foundation. Even if he was strong in martial arts, how could he be a match for the 6 great Luohan and Qin Fengxiao? Besides, Qin Fengxiao was best at using the carrot and stick. He could use other pills to exchange with Zhang Xiaohua. In a flash, Qin Fengxiao thought a lot. He turned to look at Wu Zhoushu, who had the same expression, and exchanged information in a flash. Last time when Qin Fengxiao took the yuan pill, Wu Zhoushu's heart was still bleeding. Wouldn't this yuan pill make up for the grievances between them? Suitable, why not? Qin Fengxiao immediately took over the conversation. He patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder with a smile and said, "Little brother, you have been worrying about these herbs. What do you think our pill-expanding hall does? These herbs are no different from useless herbs. Junior Brother Lu is so benevolent that Junior Brother Rin is so happy that he doesn't know what to say." Zhang Xiaohua sighed and said, "But how can I be a match for Senior Brother Lu? If I go on the field, I will be beaten down in a few moves. I might as well not go on the field." Qin Fengxiao would not allow him to slack off. He also frowned and said to Lu Lihong, "Junior Brother Rin is right. Junior Brother Lu is an outer disciple. In Jianghu, he is a first-class master. He is more than 2 levels higher than Junior Brother Rin. This is easy." Lu Lihong said proudly, "Tomorrow I will only use 1 hand and 1 foot. If I use the other hand and 1 foot, I will lose." "Good." Qin Fengxiao slapped the table and stood up. He raised his wine cup and said, "Junior Brother Lu's heroic spirit alone is enough for me to drink with you. Admirable, such a master's demeanor." It seemed that the one to go on the field was Head Master Qin. After Lu Lihong drank the wine, Zhang Xiaohua said weakly, "Thank you for your help, Senior Apprentice Brother Lu. So the bet is my pile of herbs and Senior Apprentice Brother's jade rejuvenation pill?" "Yes, it is." Lu Lihong nodded. "Senior Brother Lu will use 1 hand and 1 foot against me. If I use 1 more hand or 1 foot, I will lose?" "Of course." Lu Lihong nodded again. "Oh, then if I win, this pile of herbs will be Senior Brother Lu's. If I lose, this pill will be mine?" "Yes, that's it." Lu Lihong was a bit impatient. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and said, "Thank you, Senior Brother Lu." "You're welcome, you're welcome." Lu Lihong waved his hand and said, "Just now." But halfway through his words, he saw the eyes of the people around him. He recalled what he said just now and realized. He waved his hand even harder and explained, I was wrong, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. "It's all right, Senior Brother Lu. We're all brothers behind closed doors. There's no need to pay attention to a gentleman keeps his word." Lu Lihong didn't know if Zhang Xiaohua was using words, or if she had other intentions. However, he didn't dare to take her words seriously. If Zhang Xiaohua won, the herbs would be Lu Lihong's. If Zhang Xiaohua lost, the pills would be Zhang Xiaohua's. No matter what, Zhang Xiaohua had an advantage. Lu Lihong was in a bit of a dilemma. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua burst into laughter again. He raised his teacup and said, "I'm just joking. Senior Brother Lu, let me toast you. If I win, these herbs will be Senior Brother Lu's, and the pills will be mine. If I lose, the herbs will still be mine, and the pills will still be Senior Brother Lu's." This time, Lu Lihong didn't dare to casually agree. After thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, Junior Brother Rin is really naughty. Okay, let's do as Junior Brother Rin said. Let's drink this cup and start the bet tomorrow morning. All right. I hope that little brother will still have good luck tomorrow. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and drank the tea. However, he immediately said, It's already late today, and Senior Martial Brother Lu needs to rest well tomorrow. Why don't we move the bet to the afternoon? Chun Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxu looked at each other and said, Junior Brother Rin is right. If Junior Brother Lu has no objections, then let's do it this way. Lu Lihong naturally didn't have any objections. This is my first time participating in a gambling fight, so I'll follow your rules. After the discussion was settled, everyone sat down to drink and drink. Yan Yao asked about Zhang Xiaohua's recent situation in a low voice. -3. Chapter 588. Looking at Yan Yao's intentions, it seemed that he really valued his relationship with Rejuvenation Valley's Valleyhead Ne. He wanted to transfer Zhang Xiaohua back to the pill expanding hall at the White Yifeng Peak and point the way for Zhang Xiaohua to become an outer disciple. But how could Zhang Xiaohua be willing? First of all, the pill room at the top of Tianmu Peak was the best place to practice and refine pills. Once she moved to the White Yifeng Peak, it was a question whether there would still be such a pill room. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua didn't want to move for the time being. Moreover, what kind of place was the White Yifeng Peak? That was where the pill expanding hall was located. There were many eyes, and there were all kinds of schemes. This wasn't a place that Zhang Xiaohua was willing to go. It was better to be free and unfettered on Tianmu Peak. When the time was right, she could travel with the wind, and it would be convenient for her to find second brother. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua comforted Yang Yao and said that as long as it was a luminous pearl, it would shine no matter where it went. She even brought up the issue of her height in an attempt to persuade Yang Yao. Actually, Yang Yao was just saying, even if he wanted to transfer Zhang Xiaohua back to the White Yifeng Peak, it was just a thought. He had the heart, but was powerless to do so. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was so sensible, he naturally felt at ease. It was as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart, and he couldn't help but drink a few more cups. After sitting with her for a while, he saw that it was getting late. Zhang Xiaohua was still refining the medicinal liquid in the pill room. He didn't want to stay any longer and stood up to bid farewell. He wasn't the main character of the banquet, so Chen Fengxiao and the others didn't stand on ceremony. They only urged him to stay for a while before letting him go. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's back figure walk out of the hall without hesitation, Lu Lihong and Yang Yao, who were drinking with their heads lowered, had different expressions in their eyes. As soon as Zhang Xiaohua walked out of the hall, the noisy courtyard instantly became silent. Zhang Xiaohua was very surprised. Looking around, she didn't find anything unusual. She saw Bai Huan in the corner of the courtyard, eating and drinking at a table. At this time, seeing Zhang Xiaohua come out, she didn't dare to stay for long. Wiping the grease on her lips, she picked up a lantern behind the courtyard door and hurriedly followed him. The path was secluded and he was alone, so he didn't dare to go up and down. As soon as Zhang Xiaohua walked out of the courtyard, there was strange. Zhang Xiaohua was even more puzzled. He shook his head and walked away. She was Bai Huan, was it? Was Chen? Was it that? Was it that I? He was too. It. S to Brother Ren was Yao? Was Master? Uft. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, Senior Brother Bai, why are you being so polite? Why is it different from this afternoon? If you have something to say, just say it. Don't worry. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know that Bai Huan took him into the hall. Zhang Xiaohua ignored Lu Lihong and directly greeted Yang Yao. He saw clearly that Lu Lihong was an outer disciple and his idol. In his mind, Lu Lihong was more powerful than Qin Fengxiao. Zhang Xiaohua actually ignored Lu Lihong, which suddenly made Bai Huan think, Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are either better than Lu Lihong's, or he has a deep background in the pill expanding hall. Maybe Rejuvenation Valley is just a cover. Bai Huan didn't know much about martial arts, so he didn't know which of the two possibilities was more realistic. But no matter which one it was, Bai Huan couldn't afford to offend Zhang Xiaohua. Therefore, he unconsciously classified Zhang Xiaohua as someone who could be treated respectfully. Naturally, he spoke very politely. Bai Huan said with a smile, "Junior brother Rin, please don't blame me. I have something to ask you." "Huh?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "What is it?" Bai Huan said, "Do you remember when I just came to the top of the mountain, I asked you for help? If there is a gambling fight in the future, please let me know first." Tomorrow's gambling fight. Zhang Xiaohua was even more surprised. "Senior brother Bai, it was just decided in the hall." "How did you know it so soon?" "Humph." Bai Huan despised him, but he immediately felt that his attitude was not right. He smiled apologetically and said, "Junior fellow apprentice, you don't know. When you bravely accepted senior fellow apprentice Lu's challenge in the hall, someone secretly told the brothers in the yard. We quarreled in the yard." "Oh, I see." Zhang Xiaohua finally knew why there was an abnormal scene in the yard as soon as he walked out of the hall. Junior brother Rin dared to accept senior brother Lu's challenge, which was praised by the brothers. They all said that junior brother Ren's courage is commendable. Commendable. Zhang Xiaohua figured out the meaning of it and said with a fake smile, "Do the senior brothers all think that I can't beat senior brother Lu?" Well, Bai Huan didn't know how to answer. He scratched his head and said, "This is what I want to ask you. Do you think I should bet that junior brother Ren will win tomorrow?" "What if I bet on senior brother Bai? Who do you think you should bet on?" Zhang Xiaohua asked with interest. "Cough, cough. Junior brother Ren, please don't blame me. Senior brother Lu is an outer sect disciple. Even head leader Qin is no match for him. If I were to bet, I would definitely bet on senior brother Lu. It's just that it seems like everyone is betting on senior brother Lu. Even if senior brother Lu wins, there won't be much to gain." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "If I were you, I would also bet on senior brother Lu." "Are you sure?" "Sure, sure, and sure." After listening to Zhang Xiaohua's answer, Bai Huan had a plan in his heart and said, "In fact, I want to bet on junior brother Rin. If there is an accident, won't I be rich? Alas, I don't know if tomorrow's gambling fight will count as points. Otherwise, I really want to give it a try." Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Last time when she bet on herself, she actually won against everyone. Presumably, there would be many people speculating in tomorrow's gambling fight. But would she let them win? As the two talked, they came to the top of the mountain. It was almost midnight. Bai Huan cupped his hands and said, "Junior brother Ren, rest early. I will call you tomorrow morning." "Don't." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "The gambling fight is arranged in the afternoon, not the morning. I will rest tomorrow morning and prepare well. Come to me afternoon." "Arranged in the afternoon?" Bai Huan was stunned and immediately nodded. "Okay, junior brother Ren, rest early. Even if you lose tomorrow, it is pardonable. After all, he is an outer disciple." Hearing that Bai Huan was going to nag again, Zhang Xiaohua quickly said, "Okay, senior brother Bai, rest early. I will leave the work of the herb field to you tomorrow." After that, she turned and went to the cave. Watching Zhang Xiaohua leave, Bai Huan walked back to his hut helplessly. As he walked, he muttered, "Why can't there be an upset? Can't you let me be rich for once?" His voice was not loud, but it still reached Zhang Xiaohua's ears. Zhang Xiaohua curled her lips and said, "Who doesn't want to be rich? But before you get rich, you should not lose money. Although elixirs are good, they are not as good as herbs." After entering the cave, Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to delay. She set up the restriction and immediately went into the elixir room. She took out the futon and sat cross-legged in front of the elixir furnace. She used her divine sense to check the elixir furnace. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, she was relieved and took out the vitality stones from her arms and began her night routine. Not long after, Starlight shone down and shrouded the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. The starlight directly shot into the 8 sealed openings of the elixir furnace and also into the refining liquid. Everything was the same as the scene when Zhang Xiaohua was refining elixirs in Rejuvenation Valley. It was a quiet night. When she woke up the next day, she saw that the refining liquid was still slowly rotating and there was less dust flying out. Zhang Xiaohua knew that the refining process was about to be completed. She compared it in her heart and found that it was much faster than the previous elixir furnace. After practicing the fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua returned to the front of the cauldron and waited for a moment. Seeing that the medicinal liquid had almost stopped moving and there were no impurities being quenched, he knew that the quenching stage was completed. Then he closed his eyes and recalled the unique method of using the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. Only then did he slowly raise his left hand, and his fingers moved nimbly, sending one technique after another into the cauldron. Not long after, a small hole flashed in the formation of the cauldron. The medicinal liquid of the iron bone grass that had been quenched in the cauldron earlier came out of the small hole and floated to the center of the cauldron, where it floated motionlessly. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over the medicinal liquid. Zhang Xiaohua exclaimed in surprise again, and then immersed his divine sense into the medicinal liquid. There was also a faint starlight in the liquid. What's going on? Zhang Xiaohua touched her chin and was puzzled. Is this common in elixir refining? Maybe. This was not the time to think. Moreover, it was Zhang Xiaohua's second time refining a low-level elixir. Maybe when she refined more, she would know the reason. Zhang Xiaohua comforted herself like this and struck the incantation with her left hand again. Not long after, the black wood fruit liquid in the quaking furnace and the fragrant soul wood liquid in the calming furnace were also integrated into the liquid of the iron bone grass in the center of the elixir furnace. It was a combination of metal, wood, and water. With the experience of refining elixir in the Rejuvenation Valley last time, Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry this time. She methodically entered the liquid melting incantation, creating mutual promotion and mutual restraint in the different attributes of the liquid. The liquid that was originally still gradually rotated again as the other 2 liquid were integrated into it. Gradually, a cycle was formed inside the liquid. And in this cycle, a faint starlight also rotated slightly, as if it was also building something. After a long time, when the liquid of the 3 main ingredients stabilized, Zhang Xiaohua struck the incantation again. The liquid that had been refined in the Kuan furnace, Sun furnace, and other formations were also integrated into the liquid one by one according to the mutual restraint of the 5 elements. Every time these liquid were integrated, it would cause the liquid in the center to vibrate and swell. At one point, there were signs of collapse. However, it was all safely passed under the control of Zhang Xiaohua's incantation. When all the liquid was integrated, Zhang Xiaohua struck the last incantation. The 8 trigrams purple gold furnace roared. From the bottom of the rapidly rotating liquid in the center of the elixir furnace, a wisp of light red true samadhi fire, as thin as hair, appeared out of thin air. It wrapped around the liquid that was as big as a head. This was the unique method of the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. -3. Chapter 589. Looking at the light red true samadhi fire that was like a tiny dragon circling around the rapidly spinning medicinal liquid and occasionally penetrating it, Zhang Xiaohua wiped the faint sweat on his head and breathed a sigh of relief. When he checked the true qi in his body, he was shocked again. This simple melting of the liquid had consumed almost half of his true qi. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh again. The cultivation of the qi refining stage was really not worth mentioning. However, he also did not lack of diligent cultivation. It was just that he had only entered the immortal Tao for a short period of time. He really didn't know when he would be able to cultivate the 18 levels of the mental cultivation method one by one. Sighing, Zhang Xiaohua carefully observed the elixir furnace with his divine sense before returning to the cave. As soon as he returned to the cave, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. It wasn't that there were any strange people or things in the cave, but standing at the entrance of the cave, the blazing sun hanging high in the sky was already a little to the west. Zhang Xiaohua was a little at a loss. When he entered the cave, it was still early in the morning, and the rising sun had just shone on the cave. This simple process from the melting of the liquid to the gestation of the elixir took an entire morning? Ouch! Zhang Xiaohua immediately slapped his forehead. It was already past noon. Wasn't the gambling fight between him and Lu Lihong set for this afternoon? Looking at the time, it was about to start. Of course! Zhang Xiaohua immediately put away his panic. This afternoon's gambling fight was originally forced to do something beyond his ability. If he could be late and not have the gambling fight, that would be the best. Unfortunately, his beautiful wish would always be a beautiful bubble. Outside the cave, at a flat area on the cliff, Bai Huan anxiously paced in a small area. There were several times when he wanted to shout loudly, but just as he opened his mouth, he swallowed it back down. Just as he gritted his teeth and was about to walk into the cave, Zhang Xiaohua slowly walked out. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come out, Bai Huan was like seeing a savior. He quickly walked over, grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's sleeve and complained, "Junior brother, why did you come out so late? Head Master Qin sent people to urge you many times. I always wanted to call you, but I heard that even people with internal strength are afraid of being disturbed. I didn't dare to, but when I walked to the front of your cave, I couldn't see anything clearly. It was dark inside. I was so anxious that I wanted to jump off the cliff." Zhang Xiaohua was not anxious. He smiled and said, "Senior brother Bai, it's just a gambling fight. It's just an informal gambling fight. Why are you so nervous? It's not time yet, right?" But Bai Huan didn't know how to enlighten this guy who regarded idols as dung. An elite disciple of the outer door wanted to make friends with you and exchanged your useless herbs, but you were not in a hurry. You were simply shameless. However, Bai Huan was afraid that he would fail to live up to head Master Chen's request. He pulled Zhang Xiaohua's sleeve and rushed down the mountain. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua did not say anything. He just silently used the levitation skill and followed down the mountain. The road down the mountain was very long, but under Bai Huan's deliberate rush, it actually took them half the time yesterday to reach the gambling fight arena. At this time, the gambling fight arena was the same as what Zhang Xiaohua saw last time. It was the same layout, the same judgment, and the same busy betting. The only difference was the fanatical look in the eyes of the disciples. After all, it had been a long time since the last gambling fight. And now, standing in the arena with his hands behind his back and looking up at the floating clouds was their idol. Looking at Lu Lihong in his white robe, standing there elegantly, the eyes of the disciples were full of stars. They did not hesitate at all when they placed their bets. If they did not support him now, when would they? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua running over with Bai Huan, Qin Fengxiao's face was filled with anger. He went up to them and asked, "Junior brother Ren, what's going on? I sent people to invite you again and again. Why don't you give me face?" Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said apologetically, "Head Qin, don't worry. Little brother is really sorry. I was adjusting my breathing in the morning and forgot the time. I only just woke up. If you don't believe me, you can ask senior brother Bai." Bai Huan also said anxiously, "Yes, Head Qin, junior brother Rin did not show up at all this morning. Last night, he specially told me that he has to adjust himself well today and fight senior brother Lu in his best condition. You invited him several times, but I did not dare to shout carelessly. I was afraid that junior brother Rin would go crazy." Chun Feng glared at Bai Huan and was about to speak again when he heard a voice beside him. Junior brother Rin can adjust his breathing in seclusion at such a young age. His future is really bright and limitless." It was Lu Lihong who had quietly used his qigong to come over. Seeing Lu Lihong approach him without him noticing, Qin Feng was shocked at Lu Lihong's qigong. At the same time, he also had some doubts about Zhang Xiaohua's words. He only smiled and said, "Senior Brother Lu, are you sure? I heard that adjusting one's breathing in seclusion is a reflection of one's profound internal strength. Does Junior Brother Rin have such profound internal strength?" Lu Lihong was also surprised and asked, "Junior Brother Rin, don't worry. You're not late. You're just a little bit late. Oh, can you tell me what kind of internal strength you're cultivating?" "Reckless bull's strength," Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation. "Nonsense. I only know the name of this internal strength. Who else would I talk about if not it?" Lu Lihong was obviously stunned, as if he had never heard of it. He nodded thoughtfully and said, This technique is very powerful just from the name. I vaguely heard from the outer sect masters that it should be a first-class internal strength cultivation method in Jianghu. Not bad, Junior Brother Rin. You're very lucky to have the opportunity to cultivate such a profound internal strength. I wonder which level Junior Brother has reached?" Lu Lihong's voice was very loud, as if he was showing off his knowledge. The nearby disciples all nodded as they listened. After listening to Lu Lihong's words, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Presumably, this technique that was commonly seen in Jianghu wouldn't be seen by the martial arts masters of Wuming Hall of the Incense cult. When Lu Lihong was in Rejuvenation Valley, he was only a medicine boy and didn't cultivate martial arts. He only came into contact with internal strength cultivation methods when he came to the incense cult. Therefore, he didn't know what kind of martial arts the reckless bull strength was. Not far away, Zhang Xiaohua stole a glance at Yang Yao, who was trying hard to hold back his laughter. He was also looking up to admire the floating clouds. Zhang Xiaohua understood that everything was floating clouds. Therefore, she smiled and said, "Senior Brother Lu is wise. I'm not talented and have only just come into contact with this profound internal strength. How could I know the level? I only have a little sense of qi. I don't dare to embarrass myself." Lu Lihong nodded and said, "I'm only a medicine boy of the pill-expanding hall. Planting herbs and refining pills are my true profession. It's already good that I'm able to cultivate profound martial arts. If I want to compete with the disciples who practice internal strength from a young age, I'm too far away. Junior Brother Rin, you don't need to belittle yourself. Let's fight in a bit and you'll know. Oh, this is related to your herbs. You must try to beat me by half a move." Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "How can I be Senior Brother Lu's opponent? I've gained some understanding from practicing reckless bull force over the past few days, and I know that the level of qi in a person's martial arts will directly determine the level of their martial arts. Skills are just support. Your qi is great, and it's not something I can compare to. Even if you only use one hand, I won't be able to reach you." Lu Lihong nodded with an enigmatic expression and said in a senior tone, "Junior Brother, you're able to cultivate to this level. It's enough to show that your aptitude is not bad. I think if you're given enough time and a suitable environment, you'll definitely become an outer disciple in 10 years." When the surrounding disciples heard this, they all looked up at Lu Lihong and gave him a thumbs up from the bottom of their hearts. See, this is the style of a senior brother. At the same time, the way they looked at Zhang Xiaohua was also different. She was someone who had a high chance of becoming an outer disciple. She was a rising star. If they didn't curry favor with her now, when would they? This Lu Lihong really knows how to win people over, Zhang Xiaohua secretly said. She then cupped her hands and said, "Thank you for your encouragement, Senior Brother Lu. I'll definitely cultivate diligently and use Senior Brother Lu as my guiding light on the path of cultivation. I'll climb along the path that Senior Brother Lu has walked. I hope that Senior Brother Lu will guide me more in the future." Lu Lihong nodded and said, Of course, of course. After all, we're both apprentices from the Pill Tower Hall. Yes, we're both from the Rejuvenation Valley. If I don't take care of you, who else can I take care of? Then let's not fight this time. You can take the herbs and give me the Yuhuandan pill. Won't that be enough?" Zhang Xiaohua laughed mischievously. Lu Lihong's body swayed again and again before he finally steadied himself. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "This won't do. The most taboo in martial arts is to reap without sowing. That will cause the foundation to be unstable. If I let you get the pill easily today, you may want to take more shortcuts when you cultivate in the future. The slightest difference can lead to a great error. Maybe my little kindness today will cause an obstacle in your future cultivation." After talking for a long time, he still couldn't give it to her. Chen Feng looked at the sky with a smile and coughed. "Junior brother Lu, it's already late. Let's..." Lu Lihong stopped talking, but he still didn't forget to educate Zhang Xiaohua. "You must remember what I said today. This is based on my many years of cultivation experience." Zhang Xiaohua deeply bowed and said, "Thank you, senior brother Lu." He didn't quite understand why the Lu Lihong from last night and today's Lu Lihong didn't seem to have the same attitude. However, looking at his earnest teaching today, he really did seem like an amiable senior brother. His teachings were also to the point and were indeed correct. Although Zhang Xiaohua felt that there was something wrong, he could only nod his head. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua bow, Lu Lihong helped him up and said, "Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. Now, let me see how your junior brother's martial arts are." Then he stretched out his right hand and left leg. "I will only use this hand and one leg to attack. If the other hand and leg attack, then it's my loss." "Okay." Zhang Xiaohua also walked in front of Lu Lihong and took a stance. "Senior brother Lu, please advise me." Lu Lihong stretched out his right hand and said, "Junior brother-in, please advise me too. You first." Zhang Xiaohua smiled. She took a step forward and used the big Dipper Divine Fist on Lu Lihong's left shoulder. -3. Chapter 590. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua's fist was about to hit him, Lu Lihong calmly raised his left palm in front of him, blocking the direction of Zhang Xiaohua's fist. Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly and muttered, "Didn't you just say?" Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua's fist was clearly sluggish and her eyes were filled with doubt, Lu Lihong didn't back down. His left palm didn't move, but the four fingers of his right hand clenched and directly struck towards Zhang Xiaohua's wrist. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood. This senior martial brother Lu is really crafty. He actually made a fuss about the words. He only said to use one hand and one leg to attack. As long as the other hand and one leg attacked, it would be considered a loss. He didn't say that the other hand and one leg couldn't be used to defend. It seems like he's still fussing over the joke I made last night. However, how could Zhang Xiaohua take it to heart? She didn't exchange blows with Zhang Xiaohua. She pulled back her fist and leaned slightly to the side. Her left leg flew out, but it was Lu Lihong's right leg. She wanted to see how Lu Lihong would defend. Lu Lihong also had a few moves. Seeing the position of Zhang Xiaohua's leg, he knew what she was trying to do. He exerted strength in his legs and jumped up. With a spring kick, his left leg cut towards Zhang Xiaohua's knee. Zhang Xiaohua had already held back 60% of her strength. When she saw Lu Lihong's spring kick, she pulled back the leg she had just kicked out and jumped up. She was actually the same height as Lu Lihong. She stretched out her two hands. One hand blocked Lu Lihong's leg, while the other went straight for Lu Lihong's face. Who told me to use both hands? Of course. Lu Lihong wouldn't let Zhang Xiaohua do as she wished. He immediately changed his move. Thus, the first dozens of moves between the two were fake and real. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, their fists and feet didn't touch. After a few moves, Zhang Xiaohua understood that Lu Lihong was testing her moves. But on the other hand, didn't Zhang Xiaohua have the same idea? When Zhang Xiaohua was practicing martial arts in the Huanxi Mountain Villa, she had read many fist techniques in order to learn the moves of the Big Dipper magical fist. She had an impression of the commonly seen fist techniques in Jianghu. But Lu Lihong's moves and movements were clearly different from what Zhang Xiaohua had seen before. Lihong's moves were clearly light and graceful, and when he was wearing a white gown to display twos to use. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Zhang Xiaohua's brows were slightly wrinkled. To be honest, he still hadn't figured out Lu Lihong's true intentions. Did Lu Lihong really want to help him, apologize to him, and use the precious Yuhuandan pill to exchange for his medicinal herbs? If that was the case, then Zhang Xiaohua was willing to treat Lu Lihong as a real senior brother and completely forget about the matter of the dragon scale fruit. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly stretched out a palm from under her armpit and directly slapped Lu Lihong's left shoulder. Her palm strike was very clever, and it was precisely Lu Lihong's flaw. Lu Lihong's right hand and left leg couldn't attack. If he really wanted to exchange the Yuhuandan pill for an elixir, then he would have to raise his left hand to attack. Otherwise, it would be too late to just defend. Or, if he only defended, then Zhang Xiaohua's palm strike would land on his body. In terms of moves, Lu Lihong had already lost. It was a good opportunity for the two to get off the stage. Sure enough, Lu Lihong's eyes were filled with astonishment. He didn't seem to believe that Zhang Xiaohua could make such an exquisite move. However, his reaction was the same as Zhang Xiaohua's. He moved his body to the right and raised his left hand, trying to block Zhang Xiaohua's palm. But at this time, Zhang Xiaohua's palm had already landed. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua's palm was about to land, Zhang Xiaohua's lips curled into a smile. She thought to herself, as expected, this senior brother Lu is really a good person. However, I can't let him take away the elixir. Zhang Xiaohua was about to withdraw her palm to meet Lu Lihong's palm. At this time, she saw Lu Lihong's right arm suddenly stop and rapidly collide with Zhang Xiaohua's palm. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. If she hit him, wouldn't she win? That wouldn't be good. Just as she was about to withdraw her palm, she suddenly saw a mocking look in Lu Lihong's eyes. How was this the look of someone who did a good deed without leaving his name behind? Could it be that I was wrong? Thus, Zhang Xiaohua didn't change her move. Her palm was still aimed at Lu Lihong's shoulder. But when Zhang Xiaohua's palm touched Lu Lihong's shoulder, she felt a strong force. Lu Lihong had channeled his internal energy to his shoulder and used it to force Zhang Xiaohua to retreat. Zhang Xiaohua's heart turned cold. Then a mocking smile appeared on her face. This senior brother, Lu, really isn't here to do a good deed. Although I don't know what his goal is, exchanging elixir for elixir is definitely a lie. Presumably, she also gave up on the idea of probing Lu Lihong. With a cry of surprise, she fell backwards. Seeing this, Lu Lihong didn't chase after her. He just stood there and watched with a smile. His white robe fluttered in the wind. He really had a good appearance and a good temperament. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua. She flew back a few feet and landed on the ground. She stood up like a carp and held her other wrist. She said in a dispirited voice, "Senior brother Lu is really powerful. Your internal energy is far from what this little brother can compare to. Moreover, your technique of channeling your internal energy is also superb. It actually came from your shoulder. This little brother didn't have time to channel his internal energy to my palm. This round, senior brother Lu has won." No. Lu Lihong smiled and said warmly, "Junior brother Ren, you don't have to be so modest. Junior brother Ren's moves are very exquisite. You were actually able to see my flaw. This palm strike forced me to use my internal energy. If it was a normal exchange, I would have lost. However, in order to leave a deep impression on junior brother Ren and let him see the extensive and profound martial arts of the incense school, I think we should have tied. How about we start again?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and secretly said, "What's so fun about it? Looking at your appearance, I don't know what you're thinking. Maybe you want to impress the disciples of the Pill Tower Hall with your demeanor and martial arts? It seems like you've already achieved your goal. This round, you want to win and I want to lose. The result has already been decided. Why should we fight again?" However, Zhang Xiaohua's face was stern. She said, "Thank you, senior brother Lu, for letting me win. This time, senior brother Lu, please make the first move. Lu Lihong nodded and said, Okay, then I'll make the first move. My fist contains half of my internal energy. Be careful. After he finished speaking, he punched out. When Zhang Xiaohua was refining pills in the morning, she had consumed less than half of her internal energy. She hurriedly went down the mountain and did not have time to replenish it. Hearing Lu Lihong's reminder, she did not dare to be careless. She immediately used 40% of her remaining internal energy to simulate her internal energy. However, when the two fists collided, Zhang Xiaohua immediately knew that it was not good. She hurriedly withdrew her strength, leaving only 30% of her internal energy. However, this 30% of her internal energy was enough to make Lu Lihong's figure retreat slightly. Her eyes revealed a look of surprise. She then smiled and said, Junior brother-in, good internal energy. This strength of the bull is indeed the top cultivation method in Jianghu. Zhang Xiaohua was out of breath. She said, Senior brother Lu is too polite. I used nearly 90% of my internal energy to barely block it. Okay, junior brother-in, if I continue to hide my strength, it would be disrespectful to you. Be careful, I'm going to use 80% of my internal energy. After he finished speaking, he lifted his left leg and kicked out. Seeing Lu Lihong like this, Zhang Xiaohua was already laughing in her heart. This guy's mouth sounds good, but his hands are always dirty. Although his internal energy is not bad, it's not as good as Longting Villa's young Master Long. How can he be my opponent? Thinking about it, Longting Villa's young Master Long's aptitude was not necessarily worse than Lu Lihong's. He had received formal internal energy training from a young age, unlike Lu Lihong, who only learned martial arts after entering Chuanxiang cult. Although he was older than young Master Long, his martial arts were inferior. Since she had figured out Lu Lihong's background, Zhang Xiaohua had a plan in mind. She only needed to use the appropriate jinqi to simulate the internal energy that was far inferior to Lu Lihong's. After fighting for a while, Zhang Xiaohua appeared to be in a mess. The same moves were used frequently, but Lu Lihong found the flaws many times. Zhang Xiaohua was forced to use her internal energy to meet Lu Lihong's attacks. However, Zhang Xiaohua's internal energy was far inferior to Lu Lihong's. Even if Lu Lihong wanted to use his qinggong to avoid the attacks, Lu Lihong showed no mercy. His body fluttered all over the field. It seemed that his qinggong was much better than Zhang Xiaohua's. In the end, Zhang Xiaohua finally stopped running and sat down on the grass. She bitterly smiled and said, Senior brother Lu, this little brother really admires you. Your fist techniques, internal energy cultivation, and qinggong are all better than this little brother's. In terms of weapons, this little brother basically doesn't know anything about them. I only know how to use a small hoe to remove weeds. Seeing this, Lu Lihong also stopped. He was also slightly out of breath. However, he still smiled warmly and said, Junior brother-in, let's fight again. I see that you still have some strength left. We martial artists must face difficulties and never admit defeat. Thinking back to those years, if I lacked the slightest bit of confidence in the face of hardships, how could I have achieved what I have today? Don't. Zhang Xiaohua was out of breath. She repeatedly waved her hand and said, Let's stop here. Senior brother Lu, although your success can be replicated, after all, not everyone is like you. Anyway, I'm tired today. I just want to have a good rest. You see, okay. Lu Lihong's voice was slightly regretful. He said, Since junior brother-in said so, then I won this round. I want to help you, but I can't. Sigh, junior brother-in, you still have to work hard. I hope that 10 years later, you can stand in front of me with a new face and stronger martial arts, and bravely challenge me. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. She could only smile bitterly and said, Thank you, senior brother Lu, for your encouragement. I heard that our pill-expanding hall also has secret martial arts manuals. Wait for me to find some and train hard. I will strive to have the qualifications to challenge senior brother. Good junior brother, I believe in you. Where there is a will, there is a way. Lu Lihong put his warm hand on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder. It was the standard image of a real senior brother. -3. Chapter 591. At this time, old consecrated Lei, who had been observing from afar for a long time, shouted, "The gambling fight between Lu Lihong of Wuming Hall and Rin Xiaoyao of Pill Expanding Hall is now over. Lu Lihong of Wuming Hall wins." Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua finally lost in this gambling fight that she couldn't even release her divine sense in time. All right. The spectators were filled with jubilation as all the disciples of the Pill Opening Hall clamored without end. They were deeply proud that they were able to witness such a wonderful bet, a touching show of affection between fellow disciples, and a bet that placed friendship first and competition second. Proud, proud. More importantly, they had all bet on Lu Lihong to win and earned a certain amount of points. Of course, there were also a few individuals who were wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. They looked at the sky and shouted, "God is unfair." Why didn't there be an upset today? Yes, God was unfair. But why was God so unfair? It seemed that even God didn't know. Only those who could manipulate the outcome of the gambling fight knew. And Zhang Xiaohua was precisely this kind of person. Perhaps only when the stakes of the gambling fight were greater than Zhang Xiaohua's psychological expectations would there be a situation of God's fairness. However, with Zhang Xiaohua's upset earlier, there were now so many people who wanted to follow in her footsteps. Naturally, there would be a situation of God's unfairness, not to mention the joy and sorrow of the disciples who had bet on them. Qin Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxiu, who had been waiting outside, immediately walked into the field when they saw the outcome. They smiled and said to Lu Lihong, "Junior brother Lu's martial arts have improved by leaps and bounds. As senior brothers, we are really envious. The outer disciples of Wuming Hall really live up to their reputation." Then he said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Junior brother Rin may have lost, but he must have benefited a lot from exchanging blows with a great expert like junior brother Lu. He will definitely improve if he goes back and comprehends it well. Moreover, junior brother Lu's martial arts are so high. Junior brother Rin losing is normal. It would be strange if he won. Yes, as the ancients said, don't be arrogant if you win, and don't be discouraged if you lose. Junior brother Lu and junior brother Rin should encourage each other." Zhang Xiaohua said with a face full of shame, "Headmaster Qin is right. Junior brother was very proud of winning a few gambling fights by luck. Now, it seems that there is always someone better. Senior brother Lu's martial arts are so high. You must be one of the top figures among the outer disciples of Wuming Hall. I think the disciples who came with us from Rejuvenation Valley aren't as good as senior brother Lu." After a little flattery, Lu Lihong's face was a little red. He glanced at Yang Yao, who was talking with a few disciples not far away, and said with a smile, "You flatter me. We are all outer disciples. There is no absolute difference in our martial arts. Some people are good at fist skills. Some people are good at lightness skill. I was just lucky. All aspects are more balanced. The disciples who can go to Rejuvenation Valley with Pill Spreading Hall don't rely on martial arts. They only have some experience in Jianghu or some foundation in the sect. I was just a disciple of Pill Spreading Hall. I was not trained by Wuming Hall since I was young. I didn't have the opportunity to be sent out." Then he looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said meaningfully, "Even if you enter Wuming Hall and become an outer disciple, if you don't have a familiar master or elder to take care of you, you won't have a chance to stand out. Even your daily duties may not be better than others." Zhang Xiaohua understood. He was reminding her, "Don't look at me patrolling the mountain in Wuming Hall. It was not because my martial arts were not good. It was only because I didn't have a foundation in Wuming Hall and they didn't like me." However, Zhang Xiaohua immediately had a question mark in his heart. Lu Lihong's words are so vague. Could there be another meaning behind them? Does he want me to get close to him so that I can hug his thigh when I enter Wuming Hall? But do I need to hug your thigh? If there is a chance, Wouldn't it be better for me to hug Lord Peacock Kong's thigh? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's face blushed for no reason. This cough. Her thoughts seemed to be a little impure. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua nodded and probed. Senior Marshal Brother Lu's kind intentions are appreciated by me. We're both from Rejuvenation Valley, and we've both stayed in the Pill Expansion Hall's Grass Division. I feel closer to Senior Marshal Brother Lu, for no reason. Even if I can't enter the outer sect in the future, I'll definitely remember Senior Marshal Brother's guidance today. You're too modest, Junior Brother Rin. You've just arrived at the Pill Expanding Hall, but you're already so skilled. You're much stronger than me at that time. The door of the Wuming Hall is always open to you. I'll be waiting for you there, but don't let me wait for too long. Chen Fengxiao also smiled and said that's right. If Junior Brother Rin can enter Wuming Hall, it will be a good story in the herb department of Pill Expanding Hall. Moreover, it is my honor to have an outer disciple in Tianmu Peak. Junior Brother Rin, don't feel any pressure. Just make sufficient preparations before taking the assessment. Don't expect me to be in a hurry like Head Master Qin. It is inevitable that I will delay my whole life. Wu Zhouxiu also nodded and said, only he knew his own affairs the best. Zhang Xiaohua knew that becoming an outer disciple was a piece of cake for him. If he didn't want to enter the outer gate secretly, he could enter the outer gate now. Well, the premise was that he knew how to enter the outer gate. However, Zhang Xiaohua didn't pretend to be polite after hearing their honest words. He bowed deeply and said, Senior brothers, thank you for your kind words. I will keep it in mind. As they spoke, the spectating disciples also dispersed, leaving only a few important figures of the ruling hall and Pill Expanding Hall. Old Consecrator Lei and the others also walked over while the disciples were counting the points. Old Consecrator Lei and the others were people who had stayed at Lingering Fragrance Peak. Lu Lihong naturally didn't dare to neglect them and went up to chat with them with a smile. After a few words of small talk, Old Consecrator Lei said, Marshal Nephew, Lu's talent is outstanding. It is indeed extraordinary. Your martial arts seems to have reached perfection. Your skill is almost on par with my hall master. Lu Lihong's face turned red, and he quickly shook his head. Old Consecrator Lei, you are flattering me. Although Hall Master Ziguang is the outer gate hall master, who is also an inner disciple back then, even if I cultivate for another 30 years, I will definitely not be a match for the old hall master. Marshal Nephew Lu is already not bad. I remember seeing Marshal Nephew Lu's skill at the Wuming Hall Martial Arts competition 5 years ago. It is much better than before. Old Consecrator Feng also stroked his beard and said, That's right. This year seems to be the season of the Twilight Orchid Refinement. This is one of the outer sect disciple tests. Marshal Nephew Lu, are you prepared to get a good result in the trial? Hearing Old Consecrator Lei's question, Lu Lihong was a little hesitant. He thought for a moment and said, To be honest, Old Consecrator Lei, I have been cultivating in the outer sect for so many years. As my martial arts have improved, I have increasingly admired the martial arts of the Wuming Hall. You also know that the martial arts that the Wuming Hall can cultivate are the superficial of the Wuming Hall's martial arts. I have always wanted to go to the inner sect to take a look, but Lu Lihong hesitated for a moment. But the quota for the Twilight Orchid Refinement is limited. Not every outer sect disciple is qualified to enter, so yes, that's true. Although passing the Twilight Orchid Refinement will only give you the qualification to enter the inner sect disciple test. If you are lucky, you can directly become an inner sect disciple. This is an opportunity that your Wuming Hall disciples will fight for even if they break their heads. That's right. The other trials only determine the qualification, and then there is elimination. How can it be more convenient than the Twilight Orchid Refinement? Old Consecrator Lei shook his head. Although it is convenient, it is not easy. Every time the Twilight Orchid Refinement, many outer sect disciples will be injured and even lose their lives. Martial nephew, you must not be careless. It's not just the outer sect disciples. Even the inner sect disciples have been injured. It's just that, sigh, I don't even have the qualification to enter, let alone the danger of my life. Lu Lihong smiled bitterly. Zhang Xiaohua, who was beside him, was puzzled. She asked Qin Fengshao in a low voice, Head Qin, what is this twilight orchid refinement? Qin Fengshao pointed to the south with his finger and said, About 100 miles south from here, there is a big canyon that is filled with white fog all day long. It is called the Twilight Grand Canyon. Normally, people are not allowed to go near it. Every 5 years, the white fog at the mouth of the canyon will dissipate, revealing the road that leads to the canyon. There is a large plain and forest in the canyon, as well as a mountain range. Because there are few people, there are many rare medicinal herbs growing there. Every time the Twilight Orchid Refinement, our pill expanding hall will send some disciples into the canyon to pick some medicinal herbs. Back then, when I was in my prime, I also... What the? Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely. She interrupted. Head Qin is picking medicinal herbs a trial? That shouldn't make senior brother Lu's face change color when he talks about the canyon, right? Of course not. What I am talking about is what our pill expanding hall does. Well, in fact, the Twilight Grand Canyon is a treasure house. There are many precious things inside. Not only our pill expanding hall, the other halls such as the refining hall, cleansing jade hall, and even the heaven and earth hall will send people into the canyon. Oh, I heard that the inner disciples will also go in. However, when I went in that year, I did not see them. Even the disciples of the other pill expanding halls have not seen them. Zhang Xiaohua no longer urged him. He knew that Qin Fengshao wanted to show off his knowledge. Sure enough, he paused for a moment and said, Although this Yulon Grand Canyon is a treasure trove, there are endless dangers inside. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. She could not help but ask, What risks? Because our fragrant religion has been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and the Twilight Grand Canyon has always been deserted. Therefore, there are many fierce beasts inside. Beasts? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised again. She said, What's so strange about that? As long as there are mountains, there will be wild beasts. No matter how fierce they are, how can they beat people who know martial arts? That's right. Therefore, ordinary disciples like us must be escorted by the outer court disciples of Wuming Hall when we enter the canyon. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. Of course, escorting us is not part of their training, Qin Feng said with a smile. Come, there are more chapters. -3. Chapter 592. Qin Fengshao continued. The Valley Orchid Evening Refinement has been around for many years, so the sect basically knows which areas are safe and which are dangerous. The places that we go to are basically fixed, and the route that we take is also fixed, coupled with the escort of the outer disciples. Although there is still the danger of being attacked by ferocious beasts, the danger is a lot smaller. Of course, even so, every time we come out of the canyon, the disciples of the Pill Repository Hall will more or less suffer casualties. That year when I participated in the Valley Orchid Evening Refinement, I was also attacked by a group of wild boars on the way into the canyon. The group was scattered, and many disciples were bitten by the wild boars. More than 10 of them were seriously injured and never made it out. I was lucky to know a little martial arts. Moreover, I followed closely behind the outer disciples, so I was not injured at all. However, this is still considered good. I heard that once, when we entered the canyon, the disciples of the Heavenly Earth Hall were unlucky enough to encounter a group of wild wolves. Even the outer disciples were not spared, and all of them lost their lives. So serious? Zhang Xiaohua was flabbergasted. It's just a group of wild beasts. Even the outer disciples can't deal with them? Even if they can't beat them, they can at least run away with their qinggong. Junior brother in. You don't know that the wild beasts in the Valley Orchid Grand Canyon are not like the ones you usually see. Many of them have a deep understanding of human nature, and almost all of them have become spirits. My qigong was not good, so when I encountered a wild boar, I could only dodge it. Wild boars are like this, not to mention the ferocious wolves. The martial arts of the outer disciples are profound. Since they are buried in the belly of the wolves, there is no need to talk about us disciples. After saying this, Qin Fengshao sighed and said, however, as long as you can come out of the canyon, the hall's rewards are also generous. Therefore, the disciples of the grass division both love and hate this valley orchid evening refinement. Seeing Qin Fengshao change the topic again, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but remind him. Then how did senior brother Lu and the others train? Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Qin Fengshao was a little embarrassed. He scratched his head and said, "The outer sect disciples escorted us to the designated area, and then they left us. They also have to go to the designated trial area. Their trial method is to kill wild beasts. The more wild beasts they kill, and the fiercer they are, the more points they get. As for which area they are in, what wild beasts they kill, and how the points are calculated, I don't know. I only heard this from the outer sect disciples who went with me last time." You two are friends who have gone through life and death together. Why didn't you ask more when you came back? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Sigh, it's a pity that even though this senior managed to avoid the wild boar and bring us to our destination, I heard that he encountered a venomous snake during the trial and was poisoned to death. I didn't even see his corpse. Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised and said, "Don't tell me he didn't even bring the antidote pill with him." "Of course we have the antidote pill. It's just that the pill we refined isn't strong enough and its medicinal power is limited. It might not be enough to detoxify the poison." "I see." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. In her mind, she thought of the antidote pill in the hands of the Tenryu sect's Qin Shiyue. She wondered if the Tenryu sect's pill would be effective. Therefore she asked, then, before Zhang Xiaohua could speak, Qin Fengshao waved his hand and said, "Junior Brotherin, I see that you are interested in the outer sect disciples' trial. However, I don't know about this. The outer sect disciples have always been proud and don't interact much with us ordinary disciples. If you want to know about this, you can ask junior brother Lu." Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead. Of course, why would she ask Qin Fengshao instead of the outer sect disciples? Old consecrator Lei and the others were also talking to Lu Lihong about the Valley Orchid evening refinement in the past. Zhang Xiaohua found an excuse and asked, "Senior brother Lu, I want to ask how the outer sect disciples train." Lu Lihong smiled with interest and said, "Junior Brotherin, are your hands itching and want to test your skills in the Valley Orchid?" Old consecrator Lei smiled and said, "Martial nephew Ren's martial arts aren't bad. However, he just entered the fragrant religion and is still young. I reckon that he won't be able to enter for the next 10 years. Let's talk about it later." Wu Zhouxiu, on the other hand, said with jealousy, "After 10 years, there will always be a chance to enter. Unlike our pill department, we don't even have the qualifications to enter the valley." Qin Fengshao also walked over and said, "It's fine if you don't enter the Valley Orchid. Otherwise, your pill department will be like our grass department, always losing disciples. That's why we have to search for medicine apprentices from the outer sect every few years." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. No wonder they had to bring 10 medicine apprentices from Rejuvenation Valley every 2 years. This might be one of the reasons. Wu Zhouxiu disagreed. "Forget it. Our pill department's disciples are all envious of your grass department for having such a big opportunity. Although it's somewhat dangerous, how can there be a big return without a big investment? If junior brother Lu didn't coincidentally pick that spiritual grass in the Valley Orchid, how could he have obtained the inner sect cultivation method? If it wasn't for this cultivation method, how could junior brother Lu have succeeded in cultivating it and passed the assessment to enter Wuming Hall? Of course, junior brother Lu's talent is outstanding. This goes without saying. In the past, there were disciples who obtained the inner sect cultivation method but didn't succeed in cultivating it. Without this inner sect cultivation method, wouldn't junior brother Lu have to delay entering the outer sect for many years? Seeing that Wu Zhouxi was talking about him, Lu Lihong quickly smiled and said, "Aren't we talking about the Valley Orchid Evening refinement? How did it involve me? That year I was just lucky." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "What kind of spiritual grass did senior brother Lu encounter?" "It's actually called a spiritual grass." Lu Lihong said, "This isn't a secret. The brothers in the hall all know that it's just a 300-year-old ginseng." "Ah, 300 years old." Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised. "The ginseng itself is nothing. It's just that its age is frightening. However, it just so happened that an inner sect master was injured and needed this ginseng. That's why it was taken by an inner sect disciple. If it was normal, there might not be any future opportunities." Lu Lihong said modestly, "Then what is the inner sect cultivation method that senior brother Lu obtained?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Don't blame me for not telling you. It's just a complete version of our fragrant religion's ordinary martial arts cultivation method." Complete version? Zhang Xiaohua was even more confused. Chan Fengxiao saw this and said, "In our pill expansion hall's library, other than the records of herbs and pills, there are also martial arts cultivation methods. However, those are the most basic ones. The later cultivation methods are in the Wuming Hall and even the inner sect. Junior brother Lu is very lucky and obtained a complete set of inner sect cultivation methods." "Oh, so that's how it is." Zhang Xiaohua understood. The fragrant religion did not forbid ordinary disciples from practicing martial arts. It was just that they could only practice the simplest martial arts, which was the first level of fragrant religion's martial arts. Only the outer sect disciples of the Wuming Hall could practice more advanced martial arts. As for the higher level martial arts cultivation methods or top level martial arts cultivation methods, only the inner sect disciples were qualified or had the aptitude to practice them. Lu Lihong coincidentally obtained a complete set of martial arts cultivation methods. Not to mention that it was given by the inner sect, it wouldn't be bad. Even if it was a middle-level inner sect cultivation method, as long as one practiced it to the highest level, one would be an important figure in the Wuming Hall. No wonder Qin Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxu valued Lu Lihong so much. However, seeing that Lu Lihong had practiced this inner sect cultivation method for so many years, and his inner sect was not as high as young Master Long of the Longting Villa, either Lu Lihong's aptitude was limited or the inner sect cultivation method was not good enough. Zhang Xiaohua was not interested in asking more. Thus he continued, "Senior apprentice brother Lu still hasn't told little brother about the outer court disciples trial. Although little brother can't participate in the Orchid Evening refinement, he is still very curious about this trial." Lu Lihong laughed and said, "Junior brother Rin is really interesting. I remember that when I came back from the Orchid Grand Canyon, all the medicine boys from the Rejuvenation Valley who came to the fragrant religion pestered me to ask about the scenery and fun things in the canyon. Only you're interested in the outer sect disciples trial. You are really a strange person, ah?" Zhang Xiaohua was surprised and said seriously, "I only have this little secret, and it was seen through by senior brother Lu. It seems that senior brother Lu is also a strange person." When Zhang Xiaohua said this, everyone was surprised at first. Then they all held their bellies and pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and laughed. "I didn't expect junior brother Rin to be so humorous. Rare." Seeing her senior brothers and several old consecrators laughing, Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously touched her nose and also laughed. She thought, "Why is it so hard to tell the truth? No one actually believes me." After everyone finished laughing, Lu Lihong said, "The outer sect disciples' trial is to hunt and kill ferocious beasts. This is a secret, but the method of accumulating points is a secret in the hall." Actually, it has been a secret for so many years, but all the older disciples know about it. Today, seeing junior brother Rin being so humorous, I will also roughly explain it. Actually, the old consecrators should know more than me. Old consecrator Lei smiled and said, "We also heard a lot about it from hearsay." It's not as detailed as you, a real outer sect disciple. Alas, that's not necessarily true. These detailed methods of accumulating points can only be explained by senior brothers after the qualification for the trial is confirmed. What I know is just hearsay. Lu Lihong's tone was a bit lonely. Old consecrator lay, and the others didn't answer. Nonsense. These methods of accumulating points are the Wuming Hall's business. If Lu Lihong wasn't here, they would have said it. After all, it is a secret that the disciples of the aroma religion will know sooner or later. But now the outer sect disciple is right in front of them. If you talk about his so-called secret in front of him, isn't it the same as slapping his face? After thinking for a moment, Lu Lihong said, "The disciples who have entered the Yulon Grand Canyon know that there are many wild beasts in the canyon. The common ones are wild boars, antelopes, deer, etc. The uncommon ones are wolves, tigers, leopards, vipers, etc. Oh, there is also the legendary yellow wind and black lightning." Yellow wind? Black lightning? Zhang Xiaohua curiously asked. The yellow wind is a legendary wasp? What is black lightning? -3. Chapter 593. When he heard Zhang Xiaohua say, "Wasps are legendary," Lu Lihong knew that he had misunderstood. He smiled and said, "This wind is the wind from Gale." Yellow wind? Zhang Xiaohua was immediately interested. She asked, "What is that?" "Senior Marshal Brother Lu, tell me quickly." Ha, I thought Junior Brother and wasn't interested in these things. It turns out that you're just a child. Zhang Xiaohua was exasperated, ignoring the fact that he was already 18 years old. Oh, he forgot. He was pretending to be a 14-year-old young man. Even if he was 30 years old, wouldn't he be curious when he heard about the legendary yellow wind? Moreover, didn't her dear brother Ma Jing teach Zhang Xiaohua a good thing when they were at Huanxi Manor? When people were talking, he had to ask at the right time to raise their interest. Zhang Xiaohua was just following his advice, just as she was feeling depressed. A few disciples came to report that they had finished calculating the bets. Old consecrator Lei took the results and looked at them. He smiled and said, "Marshal Nisrin, there really are many disciples who bet on you winning. You failed to live up to their pills." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I was just lucky last time. This time my martial arts are so different from senior Marshal Brother Lu's. How can I be an upset? They might as well give me the pills. At least I'll be grateful to them." Old consecrator Lei returned the record to the disciple and said, "Post this record in the courtyard and record everyone's points. We'll distribute the bets tomorrow. There won't be many for each disciple, so there's no need to worry." A few disciples took the order and left. A disciple of the pill department ran over and reported in a low voice, "Dalong, the banquet is ready." Seeing this, Wu Zhouxi smiled and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Lu, yesterday head chin of the grass department held a banquet for you. Today, my brothers of the pill department are holding a banquet to send you off and celebrate your victory. It just so happens that a few old consecrators are also here. Let's get to know each other." Hearing this, Lu Lihong showed a difficult expression and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Wu Dalong. However, my senior brother only gave me 2 days of leave. I have to return to Black Tomb Peak tonight. If I don't leave now, I will have to delay my journey." However, Wu Zhouxi smiled and said, "It's not easy for Junior Brother Lu to return to the Pill Expanding Hall, and it's also your first time coming to Tianmu Peak. Yesterday, Head Leader Chen was the host, and our Pill Division was the host. Today, our Pill Division is the host, and our brothers from the Grass Division are the hosts. Junior Brother Lu, don't let your senior brother lose face." Then he pulled Lu Lihong's hand and said, "Who doesn't know that Junior Brother Lu is an elite disciple of Wuming Hall? It was only a day late to the Black Tomb Peak. Who could blame him? Let's go, let's go." The old consecrators have not attended a banquet for many years. It was not easy for them to agree today. Junior Marshal Brother Lu, don't disappoint the old consecrators. Well, Lu Lihong was a little hesitant. Although there were rules in Wuming Hall, After all, the incense cult had been living a peaceful life for many years. It was inevitable that these rules would be neglected by the disciples. Asking for leave was also not a big deal. Even the head of the discipline might not really give up his face to punish someone for a day's delay. Moreover, there were several old consecrators here. They had been in the inner door for a long time, and Lu Lihong had never had a chance to get close to them. They did not show up at last night's banquet, which was a good indication. Now that there was a chance, Lu Lihong had no reason to give it up. After thinking for a while, Lu Lihong gritted his teeth and said, "We will pass by Yefeng on the way. We might as well wait for Yefeng to pay a visit to Vice Hall leader Su. I heard that he has a good personal relationship with Vice Hall leader Peng of Wuming Hall. There should be no problem if he says a few words. Of course, even if there is no such reason, the old consecrators will still have to attend. Even if I have to take the risk of being punished by the head of the discipline, I will still have to drink a few cups of wine." Lu Lihong's words were pleasant to hear. The old consecrators were very satisfied and nodded with a smile. Wu Zhoushu was even happier. He held Lu Lihong's hand and said, "Then let's go. We can talk at the banquet. I still want to hear about junior brother Lu's heroic deeds in Wuming Hall." After he finished speaking, he invited the consecrators to go first while he pulled Lu Lihong behind them. Qinfeng smiled and called out to Zhang Xiaohua. They started to move forward. He opened his mouth and waved his hand. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. What kind of person was this? She had asked a question, but no matter what, he couldn't give an answer. Now he didn't even know what yellow wind and black lightning were. She wanted to turn back and ask Bai Huan. After all, he had also been to Yulon Grand Canyon. But after thinking about it, Lu Lihong had already given the old consecrator's face. Zhang Xiaohua thought about the bone condensation pill in the pill room. It had just been formed, so there shouldn't be any problems in a short period of time. She then thought about the wine at the banquet. She gritted her teeth and followed behind Qinfeng. The banquet was still held in the hall, but there were a lot more people. This time, consecrators Lei and the others were all present. Lu Lihong didn't seem to be sitting at the head of the table. The old consecrators had one seat at each table. Naturally, consecrators Lei sat at the head of the table. Lu Lihong accompanied him. Qinfeng and Wu Zhoushu also sat at the head of the table. Zhang Xiaohua originally didn't have the qualifications to sit at this table, but she had just made a bet with Lu Lihong. Even consecrators Lei thought highly of her, so she was called to sit at the end of the table. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, everyone drank until their faces were hot. They casually talked about some interesting stories in the cult. Even the Misty Hall was occasionally involved. Zhang Xiaohua listened attentively. However, although these people looked very respectable, in fact, they didn't know much in the cult of fragrance. They didn't know much about the Misty Hall and the Lingshan Peak. After listening for a while, there wasn't any special information. Finally, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't bear it anymore. She stood up with a teacup and toasted Lu Lihong. She said, "Senior brother Lu, you're so rude. You stopped halfway. Why don't you tell me about the yellow wind and the black lightning while you're still drunk?" Lu Lihong drank the wine that Zhang Xiaohua toasted him. He nodded and said, "Actually, I really don't know what the yellow wind and the black lightning are. I think that even the few old consecrators who have been in the cult of fragrance for so many years shouldn't know." Old consecrator Lei nodded. "That's right. These 2 are the most powerful beasts in the Yulon Grand Canyon. Any disciple who encounters them will lose their life. Therefore, no one knows what these 2 beasts are." "Huh?" Zhang Xiaohua curiously asked, "Since no one has survived from these 2 beasts, how do you know that these 2 beasts exist? You even named them Yellow Wind and Black Lightning." "Hee. Although old consecrator Lei's words are somewhat careless, it is precisely so. Back then, not only the outer disciples and the disciples of the various halls, even the inner disciples would often inexplicably lose their lives. This matter attracted the attention of the cult leader. In the future trials, the most outstanding disciples of the inner sect would be sent out to find out the reason. As the saying goes, when a person walks by the river, how can his shoes not get wet? These two beasts had harmed the disciples many times, so they would always be encountered by the inner sect disciples. According to the outstanding disciples who paid with their lives that year, these two beasts were extremely fast and couldn't be seen clearly. One was like a gust of wind. As soon as it heard the sound of the wind, it would bite the throat and leave only a yellow shadow, so it was named Yellow Wind. As for the other one, it was as fast as lightning. Like a bolt of lightning, it would also cut the throat and leave only a black shadow, so it was named Black Lightning. These two ferocious beasts had killed countless disciples in the past, so much so that no one dared to enter the Yulon Grand Canyon to train. At that time, Lord Hierarch, several elders, and consecrators set out together to hunt these two ferocious beasts. Unfortunately, I heard that the two beasts were seriously injured, but they still managed to escape. Then, what kind of beasts are these Black Lightning and Yellow Wind? Everyone shook their heads. That year, the seniors who participated in this matter kept their mouths shut. How could others know? It's just that later on, these two beasts never appeared again. Perhaps they were seriously injured and died. It's also unknown. So it's like this. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Perhaps they didn't die, but they learned a lesson and didn't dare to attack our trial disciples. It's very possible. These beasts all have spirituality. Perhaps they're hiding somewhere unknown. It's also because of this that the Yellow Wind and Black Lightning are shrouded in a mysterious aura. Then, what's going on with the trial for you outer sect disciples? Speaking of this trial, it's actually very simple. It's not as complicated as Junior Brotherin thought. It's just like when we gambled a moment ago. The disciples below the stage were calculating points. It's just that winning the gambled battle gives you 1 point, while the outer sect disciples only get the corresponding points by killing a beast. Yes, I understand a little. However, the points for killing a tiger and a white deer should be different, right? Our ancestors divided the beasts in the Yulon Grand Canyon into 3 grades according to the strength of the beasts. The first grade is the most common ones, such as antelopes and white deer, which are worth from 1 to 5 points. The second grade is wild boars and hyenas, which are worth from 10 to 50 points. The third grade is wild wolves, tigers, lions, and so on, which are worth from 1 to 500 points. Every outer sect trial disciple must bring the proof of killing the beasts back to Wuming Hall. The hall master will specially arrange people to record the points. Then, how many points are needed to participate in the outer sect selection? Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat curious. This? Lu Lihong looked at Zhang Xiaohua and then at everyone. Seeing Lu Lihong hesitate, old consecrator Lei smiled and said, "If Marshal Nephew Lu is not convenient to say, then this old man will say it for you. Although this is a secret, it's a secret that everyone knows." Lu Lihong smiled and didn't speak. Old consecrator Lei said, "This point is 2,000. Ah? Zhang Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. So many? Doesn't that mean we have to hunt 4 tigers? Furthermore, who knows how many animals we have to kill in a single orchid dusk refining? -3. Chapter 594. Alas, Lu Lihong sighed. Wuming Hall's outer court disciples are numerous, and all of them want to enter the inner court. Therefore, the threshold for the outer court test naturally has to be higher. Otherwise, there would be no point in selecting experts. Zhang Xiaohua mischievously laughed. Then, if one hunts 2,000 white deer or antelope, wouldn't one also qualify for the outer court test? Ha ha ha, everyone laughed. Lu Lihong said, "Although that is the case, whether or not there are 2,000 white deer or antelope in the entire Yulon Grand Canyon is another matter. Even if you hunted 2,000 antelope, other people hunted ferocious beasts. How can you take out 2,000 antelope? Even if you were given the qualification to participate in the test, do you still have the face to participate? It's just a discussion, Zhang Xiaohua embarrassedly said. Then he continued to ask, If you obtain 2,000 points, you will be eligible to participate in the outer court test, and select the disciples who are eligible to participate in the inner court test. I just heard Senior Brother Lu say that if you are lucky, you can directly qualify for the inner court test. What does this mean? This time, Lu Lihong no longer hesitated and said, as Junior Brother Rin said, to obtain the outer court test qualification, you still have to compete in order to obtain the inner court test qualification. However, if you can obtain 5,000 points in the trial, you can directly qualify for the inner court test, and you don't have to compete with other outer court disciples for the qualification. 5,000? Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Good. 10 tigers. You guys are really ruthless. Hee. Junior Brother Rin hasn't been to the Yulon Grand Canyon, so he doesn't know that the tigers there are very fierce, definitely comparable to a martial arts master. Moreover, they are also very cruel. As long as they see people, they will certainly attack and bite them to pieces, eating them alive. But if we don't disturb their peace, they may not. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to finish, Lu Lihong interrupted him and said, but if they are not hunted, we can't qualify for the inner court test. Moreover, they are living in the Yulon Grand Canyon, eating a lot of other animals such as deer and antelope. If we hunt the tigers, we can control their numbers and let them eat less weak animals. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Beside him, Wu Zhouxiu softly asked, Junior Brother Lu, I heard that in addition to the 5,000 points, there are several ways to directly qualify for the inner court test. Is this true? And this is true. Lu Lihong nodded and said, as I said, in addition to the usual fierce beasts, there are many other rare fierce beasts in the Yulon Grand Canyon. These fierce beasts are even more ferocious than tigers and lions. If an ordinary outer court disciple were to encounter them, their life would be in danger. For example, giant python, giant ape, etc. If you can hunt these fierce beasts, as long as you can kill one, you can advance to the inner court test. In addition, in the Yulon Grand Canyon, there are many heavenly treasures, all of which are hidden in difficult-to-find places. These places are abnormally dangerous, or guarded by extremely powerful fierce beasts. If you can pick these things, you can hand them over to the inner court for inspection. If you like them, you can directly advance to the inner court test. Is there anything else? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but ask. These are not enough? Lu Lihong curiously said. No matter which of these two, it is incomparably difficult. Even the inner court disciples don't dare to try. Of course, according to the other senior brothers in the hall, there seems to be other ways, but their words were vague, so I didn't dare to ask. Perhaps when I obtain the qualifications for the Yulon Grand Canyon, I will naturally know. Good. Chan Feng Xiao on the side slapped the table, raised his wine cup, and said, Then let us first toast to Junior Brother Lu, wishing that Junior Brother Lu can successfully obtain the qualifications for the Yulon Grand Canyon. Everyone laughed and said, as it should be. Lu Lihong also raised his cup. Let us borrow everyone's auspicious words. Come, cheers. Zhang Xiaohua got the answer she wanted, so she was happy in her heart and raised her cup to pass off the fish eyes as pearls. This banquet was very lively, and it didn't disperse until the sky was about to turn dark. Qin Feng Xiao and Wu Zhouxiu wanted to keep Lu Lihong for the night, but Lu Lihong didn't dare to delay. He only said that he had to rush back to the White Mountain Peak first, and his heart would feel safe. Yang Yao also had to report back to the pill-spreading hall. Thus, everyone didn't force them to stay, and watched the two lead their horses down the mountain. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua actually accompanied them to finish the banquet, Qin Fengxiao patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, Little brother, don't you feel that your senior brother Lu's martial arts are strong, and that he's easy to get along with? Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, Senior Brother Lu is indeed my role model, but now that I'm a disciple of the Wuming Hall, I still feel the head Qin is the one who's easy to get along with. Ha ha ha! Qin Fengxiao laughed and pointed at Wu Zhouxiu. Brother Wu and I were like your senior brother Lu. wanting to rush into the outer sect with endless faith. But the situation was stronger than us. Look at him, he's limitless in the outer sect. But what about us? Little brother, work hard on your cultivation. You lost to senior brother Lu today, but it doesn't mean anything. You're young, and your internal strength isn't outstanding, and your various conditions are much worse than Lu Lihong's. Of course, you've just come to the incense cult, so your foundation is much better than Lu Lihong's, but Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Why did he suddenly stop encouraging? She couldn't help but ask, but what? Wu Zhouxu sighed, that's your chance. Then he looked at Qin Fengshao and said, back then Head Qin also went to the Yulon Grand Canyon, but unfortunately he only picked some ordinary herbs, not even the old ones. Well, even the iron bone grass that Bai Huan gave you can't compare to it. Qin Fengshao said with a lonely smile, Lu Lihong's Yulon Grand Canyon is a few hundred years old ginseng. It's fine if you said you picked the old ginseng, but it just so happened that the inner sect elder was seriously injured and urgently needed 100 years old ginseng, and the older the better. There are many 100 years old ginseng in the incense cult, but there aren't many that are hundreds of years old. If you can save the life of the inner sect elder, the reward must be rich. A complete internal strength cultivation method. Just thinking about it makes me envious. Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved. Does the incense cult not have the normal internal strength cultivation method of the Jianghu? Well, there is, but it's all in the inner sect. Ordinary disciples like us can only practice the basic cultivation method of the incense cult. But what about my reckless bull force? Didn't I learn it from the outside? If I teach it to you, won't I be able to succeed? Little brother, you don't know that the medicine apprentices who enter the incense cult are all young. People like you are very rare, so there are very few people in the pill expanding hall who know the external cultivation method. Oh, there are a lot of disciples in the weapon refining hall who practice other internal strength. However, there is a rule in the incense cult, that is, other than the disciples who have practiced the external martial arts, other disciples can't practice the martial arts of the incense cult. If they are found, they will be punished according to the cult rules. So it's like that. Zhang Xiaohua was a little confused, but she could only nod. So, little brother, if your whatever force is really so good, then you must practice it to the highest level. Look, you have already entered the sect and reached the highest level. You will definitely be able to fight against Lu Lihong. At that time, you will also have the qualifications to enter the outer sect. Oh, right, it's best if you have the confidence to go. This is an opportunity that every ordinary disciple only has once. Of course, if little brother is lucky, you will be able to guess the best spiritual grass in the orchid evening refinement 10 years later. You will probably be able to soar to the sky. Wu Zhouxiu encouraged with a slightly sour taste in his mouth. Soar to the sky? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. What's the use of soaring to the sky if your foundation is not stable? Even if you enter the Wuming Hall, like senior brother Lu, you still have to worry about the orchid evening refinement quota. It's better to be free and unfettered on Tianmu Peak. Ah, Qin Fengshao and Wu Zhouxi were both surprised. Becoming an outer sect disciple was the goal of every knowledgeable, ambitious, and idealistic disciple of the incense cult. The two of them had been encouraging Zhang Xiaohua for half a day because they wanted him to have this mindset so that he would have a clear goal in his future cultivation. This guy, on the other hand, wanted to be free and unfettered. It was really a rotten wood that could not be carved. Therefore, Wu Zhouxiu said earnestly, "Little brother, you have to have a long-term plan. You can't be like us and spend the rest of your life on Tianmu Peak, right?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled. "If I really become an outer sect disciple, what benefits will I get? The treatment will be better, you will have more martial arts to practice, and you will also have the opportunity to become an inner sect disciple." "Oh, then what about after I become an inner sect disciple? The treatment will be better too? There will be more martial arts to practice, and then you will be able to go wherever you want." You will be able to lie on lingering fragrance peak and bask in the warm sunshine. Haha, Wu Dalong, can't I bask in the warm sunshine on our Tianmu peak right now? This Wu Zhouxiu did not know how to answer. Chen Fengxiao chuckled. Wu Dalong, don't listen to this kid's nonsense. He just lost to Lu Lihong today and is feeling uncomfortable. He is just here to find some feeling. Have you forgotten? He is the prospective son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. Valley Master Nie's charming daughter is still waiting for him to return to the bridal chamber. This kid's motivation to improve is even more than Lu Lihong's back then. Of course. Wu Zhouxiu slapped his forehead and smiled. I was fooled by this kid. All right, Headmaster Chin. Let's drink a few more cups. I still want to drink more. That's what I was thinking. Let's go. Hey, little brother, are you still bringing a teacup to join in the fun with us? Ever since Zhang Xiaohua won a few gambling fights, defeated Zhou Shuming and Qinggong, and received Lu Lihong's affirmation today, even Wu Zhouxiu had changed the way he addressed her. This little brother was no longer just a term that Qin Fengxiao used. -3. Chapter 595. Hearing Wu Zhouxiu's greeting, Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, You two can go now. I still need to go back and practice martial arts. I also need to find a place to water this stomach full of tea. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's words, the two didn't keep him and went back to the courtyard. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the back and said to himself, How can a sparrow or swallow know the ambition of a swan? Then he didn't hesitate and used his Qinggong to go to the top of Tianmu Peak. Inside the alchemy room at the top of Tianmu Peak, the medicinal liquid inside the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace was still spinning as usual. The faint red lines were also constantly moving around without any abnormalities. Zhang Xiaohua relaxed and sent a few spells into the furnace. He sat cross-legged in front of the furnace and meditated to comprehend the heavenly Tao. Night gradually came and the night gradually deepened. While Zhang Xiaohua was practicing the worry-free Heart Sutra, endless starlight still passed through the furnace and joined the spinning of the pill. Far away, in an exquisite little house on Bayou Peak, Vice Hall Master Su of the Pill Tower Hall was sitting at the top and leisurely sipping tea. To his left, a person was sitting there respectfully. This person was Lu Lihong, who had just returned from Tianmu Peak. Looking at his current expression, he was humble and cautious as if he was facing his elders. It was far from the arrogance and warmth of Tianmu Peak. Seeing Lu Lihong's performance, Vice Hall Master Su was very satisfied. After a while, he kindly said, Martial Nephew Lu, no need to be so polite. You are now a disciple of the Wuming Hall, and I am only a Vice Hall Master of the Pill Tower Hall. No matter how long my hand is, I can't control you. Lu Lihong didn't dare to be negligent and respectfully said, Vice Hall Master Su has given me a new life. Every time I see you, I will see my elders according to how I see them. How can I not be respectful? There's no need. You're being too courteous. Back then, I only helped you because I saw how hard-working you were in your cultivation and how talented you were. Furthermore, your luck was pretty good as well. That's why I decided to help you. That's all. Lu Lihong licked his lips and was still humble. I dare not forget Vice Hall Master Su's kindness. After a while he probed, Vice Hall Master Su, I have already done what you asked me to do. Vice Hall Master was slightly surprised. Martial Nephew is very diligent. You have done it so quickly? That's right. I will definitely put your matters first. Good, then tell me about Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts. Vice Hall Master Su asked. After thinking for a while, Lu Lihong cautiously said, This child's martial arts are very high, but he is still young and has only cultivated internal strength for a short time. So his internal strength is relatively weak. Although his moves are somewhat exquisite, it is a pity that they are rather monotonous. It is just a set of fist techniques. Yes, his lightness skill is quite good. He may have received guidance from some experts in Rejuvenation Valley, but he is still a bit inferior to me. Similar to what you said, he should be at the same level as Chen Fengxiao and the others. After he finished speaking, he took out the jade bottle from his bosom and respectfully handed it to Vice Hall Master Su. He said, "I've already used this jade rejuvenation pill. Please take it back, Vice Hall Master Su." Haha. As soon as you said you wanted to exchange the medicinal herbs with him, this kid immediately took the bait. Yes, Vice Hall Master Su has a divine foresight. At first, he was hiding somewhere and didn't want to see me. When he heard that I could exchange the medicinal herbs with him, it was as if he had seen his own father. Haha, it's nothing. Which one of the medicine boys from Rejuvenation Valley didn't treat the medicinal herbs as treasures when they first came? This kid worked himself to death and finally won a few gambling fights with great difficulty, but they were all exchanged for medicinal herbs. It was purely drawing water with a sieve. Now that he has just come to his senses, how could he refuse the bait you sent over? Right, you returned to White Mountain Peak again. Will Yang Yao have any suspicions? No, I originally wanted to rack my brains to think of a reason, but Wu Zhouxiu actually wanted me to stay behind to see him off. After drinking this wine, I naturally have a reason. Wu Zhouxiu, he knows how to conduct himself. Vice Hall Master Su nodded, slightly very satisfied. Seeing that Vice Hall Master Su only spoke and did not accept the pill, Lu Lihong said again, "Since this bait has been used up, then please take it back." Vice Hall Master Su snorted. "What reason do I have to take back what I have given out? Take this pill as a reward for your work this time." Ah? Lu Lihong was surprised and somewhat in disbelief. He said with a trembling voice, "Vice Hall Master Su, isn't this too valuable? This matter was just a small matter. How can you treat me like this? It's fine. You have always done things properly. I am also happy. Although this pill is valuable, I have no use for it. You can keep it. Perhaps it will be of some help in the future." Lu Lihong thought about it for a moment, then gritted his teeth and accepted it. Actually, he had wanted to use this opportunity to help Vice Hall Master Su in order to ask for something else. However, Vice Hall Master Su had given him this pill, which meant that he understood what he had helped him with in the past. Thus, he couldn't bring himself to ask for anything. "Then I won't be polite." As he spoke, Lu Lihong put away the jade bottle. His face was filled with joy and worry. Seeing Lu Lihong's wonderful expression, Vice Hall Master Su also revealed a look of confidence. However, Lu Lihong was only thinking about his own matters and did not dare to face it directly, so he did not notice. The two of them sat in silence for a while. Lu Lihong raised his head and was about to get up and leave. Vice Hall Master Su said softly, "Martial Nephew Lu, since you have already tested Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts, then you must have full confidence in dealing with this brat, right?" Lu Lihong was stunned and said there should be no problem. If it was a gambling fight, even Chen Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxiu would be able to defeat Ren Xiaoyao. And that's good. Vice Hall Master Su nodded, causing Lu Lihong to be confused. The gambling fight on Tianmu Peak was not a matter of 1 or 2 years. Why was he specifically mentioning a little medicine boy who had just entered Tianmu Peak? Following that, there was another wave of speechlessness. The house was silent for a while. Thus, Lu Lihong got up and said, "It is already late. Vice Hall Master Su, please rest early. I will take my leave first." Vice Hall Master Su smiled. "Martial Nephew Lu, don't be anxious. I see that Martial Nephew Lu is frowning. Is there something difficult? Didn't you just treat me as your father? Why don't you tell me? This old man may not be able to help you, but I can be your reference." I am frowning? Lu Lihong was surprised and secretly wondered. I was so respectful just now. How could he see that I am worried? But this is also a good opportunity to talk about it. Maybe. After thinking about it, Lu Lihong cupped his hands and said, "Vice Hall Master Su really has the demeanor of a father. You can even see this. Alas, it is really annoying to talk about it." Then he told Vice Hall Master Su about how he wanted to enter the Grand Canyon for the trial. Then he said, "There are many experts in the Wooming Hall. This little one is not that outstanding. Moreover, they have been cultivating in the Wooming Hall since young. This kind of opportunity will not fall on this little one. But if I don't enter the Grand Canyon for the trial, I may never have the opportunity to participate in the outer disciple test, let alone the inner disciple test." Vice Hall Master Su nodded slightly. "Oh, so it is like this. You are right. It is really difficult for you to get the qualification for the outer disciple test. If you can go to the Yulon Grand Canyon for the trial, you may have a chance. Hee, I forgot that place is your blessed land. Last time was a great opportunity. Who knows, this time might be the same." Lu Lihong looked at Vice Hall Master Su with some desire and said, "Yes, this little one's internal strength has not improved." 5 years later, it is even harder to say, so Vice Hall Master Su nodded again and said, "I am familiar with your Vice Hall Master Pung. He seems to be able to talk to you." Then he picked up the teacup and took a sip. Ah! Vice Hall Master Su's words were very soft, but in Lu Lihong's ears, it was like the sound of nature. He hurriedly stood up and asked in disbelief, Then you are willing to." However, he couldn't bring himself to say the rest of his words. Indeed, this was a huge favor. Although he had been praised highly at Tianmu Peak, he was clear about his own position in the outer sect. The person in front of him was also clear about this. This favor was something that he could never repay, no matter what. Therefore, he didn't dare to continue probing. Vice Hall Master Su's expression didn't change. He only raised his eyes and quietly looked at Lu Lihong. After a long while, he put down the teacup and calmly said, "This old man can help you open your mouth. However, this old man hopes that you will listen to this old man in the future." Lu Lihong was overjoyed when he heard this. He walked forward and said, "Vice Hall Master Su has given me a new life. In this world, my parents gave birth to me, and Vice Hall Master Su created me. In the future, I will follow Vice Hall Master Su's lead. If you want me to go east, I will go east. I don't care about north, south, or west at all. Even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire, I will do it." Vice Hall Master Su smiled and said, Good. Since Marshal Nephew Lu says so, this old man agrees. Marshal Nephew Lu, please sit down first. I will definitely help you with this matter. However, this old man has something that I want you to do." Lu Lihong nodded and said, "As long as Vice Hall Master Su wants me to do something, I will not refuse. Don't agree so quickly. This matter is not complicated. Come closer, closer." Lu Lihong was stunned. However, he still walked forward and Vice Hall Master Su whispered in his ear for a while. Lu Lihong was pleasantly surprised at first. Then he frowned and finally turned pale with fright. In the end, he muttered, "Vice Hall Master Su, this is not appropriate. But this is 2, -3. Chapter 596. Seeing Lu Lihong's reaction, Vice Hall Master Su was not surprised and whispered, "What's wrong? This is just the first thing, and you're already making excuses. Then, what you said just now, can this old man treat it as a fart?" Lu Lihong's face turned green and red as he said awkwardly, "But the rules of the incense order." "Bullshit rules. According to the rules, why would an outer disciple like you stay in my White Mountain Peak and obediently be a disciple of the Grass Division? But the reality is, aren't you still carefree in the outer sect and working hard to enter the inner sect?" Lu Lihong's face turned pale as he sat back in his chair in a daze. Seeing this, Vice Hall Master Su struck while the iron was hot and said, "Everyone thinks that you're a person with good fortune. Of course, this is true. Others enter the Yulon Grand Canyon to pick herbs that are decades old. You, on the other hand, pick ginseng that is hundreds of years old. Everyone says that you're a genius, and this old man doesn't deny that you're really a genius. Just by relying on the inner sect's cultivation method, you were able to cultivate to a very high level. Unfortunately, How could the threshold of an inner sect disciple be so easy to cross? If it was easy, then there's no need to talk about others. Even Chen Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxi were not much worse than you. How could they fail? I don't need to say these words anymore. Lu Lihong's face was now ashen. In this short period of time, the expression on his face changed very quickly. It could be seen that deep in his heart there were a lot of emotions. Vice Hall Master Su squinted his eyes and said, "As long as there are people, there will be Jianghu. Although the incense order is a paradise, it is not a pure land. Don't forget, you yourself are an example. If I hadn't warned Vice Hall Master Peng in advance to be merciful, how could you have passed the outer sex test so easily? Hee, I know you were not convinced at that time, and you also spent a lot of effort to pass the assessment. But later on, when you entered the outer sect, did you realize that the martial arts of those senior brothers who assessed you back then was much higher than yours?" Lu Lihong's face was slightly bloodshot. He said in a hoarse voice, "I know. At that time, Vice Hall Master Peng had already explained it to me. Those senior brothers didn't say anything. Haha, that's true. Our fragrant order has strict rules. Occasionally doing such a thing would make people tremble with fear. Of course, it's also because you've worked hard and your martial arts are really good. That's why others can't see through you. All these years, those senior brothers who tested you didn't cause you any trouble, did they? No, everything seems to be real. If Vice Hall Master Peng had not pointed it out, I wouldn't have known that it was Vice Hall Master Su's grace." Then Vice Hall Master Su said, "Do you know why I chose you back then?" "I don't know. I've always wanted to ask. Let's not talk about the others. Chen Fengxiao and Wu Zhouxi are both good at martial arts. They are stronger than me. Why didn't you choose them? It's very simple. Because you took out the 100-year-old ginseng and received the internal strength cultivation method from the inner sect. If you took the internal strength cultivation method from the inner sect and passed the test of the outer sect and became an outer sect disciple, even if others felt that your martial arts were a little weak or doubted the process of the test, wouldn't they have to consider the influence of the inner sect? Besides, even if the people in the inner sect knew about it, wouldn't your 100-year-old ginseng be enough to protect you?" Lu Lihong was a little angry. He struggled and said, "But if you didn't intervene, I could still enter the outer sect after a few more years of practice. Haha." Vice Hall Master Su chuckled and said, "Well, let me ask you first. You've practiced in the Wuming Hall for so many years. Why do you still feel that you can't pass the test of the outer sect? The Wuming Hall only takes care of its own disciples since childhood. They don't care about me, a disciple who joined halfway. They treat me unfairly. How can I be better than them? Of course there is unfairness. But can you deny that the Wuming Hall didn't give you any guidance when you practiced your internal strength and other martial arts?" Lu Lihong was a little tongue-tied. After thinking for a while, he said, "Frankly, they didn't. If I had any questions, Senior Brother Chuangong would tell me everything he knew." Vice Hall Master Su clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Although I can't give you all the fairness in terms of martial arts, you are not worse than other disciples in the Wuming Hall." Lu Lihong really didn't expect that Vice Hall Master Su would take care of him when he practiced in the Wuming Hall. Could it be true? Vice Hall Master Su ignored Lu Lihong and continued, "Since you have practiced in the Wuming Hall for so many years, your martial arts cultivation is just SOSO. What if you didn't join the outer sect and just stayed in the pill-expanding hall? Are you sure you can pass the outer sect test and enter the Wuming Hall?" Lu Lihong was speechless again. It was true. After all, the outer sect test was complicated. Not only did the Wuming Hall test the disciples' martial arts, but there were also some strange places to test their temperament and aptitude. If he hadn't been warned by some outer sect disciples in advance, he wouldn't be sure that he could pass the test even now. Therefore, Lu Lihong had to say in a low voice, If so, I have to thank Vice Hall Master Su for giving me a fair environment to practice martial arts. Well, good. Vice Hall Master Su was very satisfied and said with a smile, "In fact, I chose you because you have these very coincidental conditions. What I value more is your character of being grateful. Do you still remember the conflict between you and Chen Fengxiao?" "I remember. I just couldn't stand Chen Fengxiao teaching the disciples of the Rejuvenation Valley a lesson. That's why I had a conflict with him." "Well, that's right. The other disciples of the Rejuvenation Valley avoided Chen Fengxiao. Only you stood up. Although you didn't fight, it's enough to show that you are grateful to the Rejuvenation Valley. You are a rare good boy." "I don't dare. I was young and frivolous. If Vice Hall Master Su didn't happen to pass by, I would have been beaten up by Chen Fengxiao." "Ha ha ha, isn't this fate between you and me? If I didn't know you, how could I be an outer sect disciple today?" "Alas, nephew, you don't have to sigh. Think about it. With Chen Fengxiao's fiery temper and ungrateful character, how could I let him enter the outer sect? Maybe after he enters the outer sect today, he will forget about me tomorrow. Maybe he will even make mistakes for me. Although I'm not afraid of this, it's still troublesome. Actually, Senior Brother Chin is also a hot-blooded man." Vice Hall Master Su waved his hand. "What hot-blooded man? It's all nonsense. What I want is a disciple who is loyal to me, not someone like him. There are plenty of people like him in the Pill Tower Hall. As for Wu Zhouxi with his image, he can only stay on Tianmu Peak and face off against Chen Fengxiao. If he is sent to Wuming Hall, I will lose face for no reason." Lu Lihong was dumbfounded. He didn't know if he should be thankful for his good looks or blame his good looks. Although Wu Zhouxi wasn't tall, his looks were average. Looking at him standing on Tianmu Peak, his leadership skills weren't bad either. But all of this was nothing in the eyes of Vice Hall Master Su. Just because his image wasn't good, his future was ruined. How sad. I've already answered your question. I think you know the pros and cons. My request just now isn't too complicated. Have you thought about it?" Hearing Vice Hall Master Su's questioning, Lu Lihong still hesitated. "Vice Hall Master Su, if you have any orders, I won't dare to slack off. But we will spread the rules of the incense sect." Before Lu Lihong finished, Vice Hall Master Su waved his hand. "Rules? After talking for so long, you're still thinking about that broken rule. This old man can guarantee that there's absolutely no problem with this matter. Why don't you think about it? Even if you complete this matter, who would know that it was you who did it? Are you the head disciple of Wuming Hall or an inner sect disciple? Don't forget that you are now under my care. In the future, I don't need to use any tricks. I only need to make it clear to Vice Hall Master Peng so that he will no longer treat you differently. I don't need to tell you about your situation. I believe you know it yourself." After he finished speaking, he took out a jade bottle from his bosom and placed it on the table, saying, "This is a jade rejuvenation pill. Consider it your reward for helping me for the first time. In the future, whenever this old man has something to trouble you with, I will give you an appropriate reward according to the difficulty of the matter. This jade rejuvenation pill is just a new pill that this old man can take out. I believe that nephew already has an idea of how many pills there are in the inner sect. This old man has all of these pills. If you help this old man in the future, I will not treat you unfairly." Hearing Deputy Hall Chief Su's words, Lu Lihong looked at the jade bottle on the table with greedy eyes. He closed his eyes and pondered for a long time. Then he secretly gritted his teeth. What this old man wants to do is not too difficult. He even wants to give me a jade elixir as a reward. He must be testing me. But if I take this as an example, I will definitely be rewarded handsomely if I work for him in the future. Forget it. A man's ambition is limited by his poverty. I still have to live under his roof. After thinking about it, he lowered his head and said, "Vice Hall Master Su is so generous and has treated me so well. How can I not agree?" Good. That's good." As he said that, he waved his hand and the jade bottle floated to Lu Lihong. Seeing this, Lu Lihong's eyes revealed a look of admiration. This kind of pure internal strength was not something that he could compete with. Lu Lihong took the jade bottle and said, "I don't deserve it. Vice Hall Master Su, this matter hasn't been settled yet. I don't deserve this pill." Vice Hall Master Su waved his hand in a magnanimous manner and said, "It's fine. I'm not worried about you. Just take it. I believe you can handle it well." "All right. Thank you for your trust, Vice Hall Master Su. I can only accept it," but Vice Hall Master Su smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about anything else. I will take care of it. Once you do it, I will naturally know." Lu Lihong nodded and smiled apologetically. "I understand. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." "All right, go ahead. Go and prepare for the trial." Lu Lihong was overjoyed. -3. Chapter 597. A blazing sun hung high in the southeast. Above the sea of clouds, a small sword was shuttling back and forth in the air. It was as if the small sword had a mind of its own. Just as the small sword was shuttling through the air, 2 light red rings suddenly descended from the sky and swiftly wrapped around the small sword. In an instant, the small sword seemed to have lost its vitality and fell rapidly. But just as it fell 3 feet, the 2 rings suddenly trembled and flew up into the sky, landing directly into a cave on a nearby mountain peak. Then a tall young man dressed in a green robe walked out, holding the jade ring and small sword that had just entered the cave. Standing at the entrance of the cave, he looked down at the jade ring in his hand and then looked up at the pure white sea of clouds. His eyes were full of expectation. This person was Zhang Xiaohua, who was practicing alchemy on Tianmu Peak. Zhang Xiaohua had already memorized the flying sword manual from the Jade Water Sword, but she had never had the time to practice it. Now that she had some free time to refine the bone coagulation pill, she used her divine sense to instruct the small sword to practice above the sea of clouds. At the end of the practice, Zhang Xiaohua had an idea and took out the refined dragon binding ring, wanting to test its power. As expected, although the small sword was very nimble, wherever Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense reached, the dragon binding ring also followed. The small sword actually had no place to dodge. Of course, this was because Zhang Xiaohua was operating the 2 things herself, so it was inevitable that she was experimenting. But even so, it was still quite powerful. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was looking at the sea of clouds, thinking about the imperial wind technique that she had been practicing for 10 days. In these 10 days, Zhang Xiaohua practiced in the pill room when she had the time while refining pills. Now, she had just started practicing. According to the Jade Slip, once she practiced the imperial wind technique, she would be able to fly in the air and ride the wind. But with her current cultivation, she really didn't dare to jump out of this cave and step into the sea of clouds. If I can step on these continuous white clouds and ride the wind, I'm afraid my cultivation would be like that of an immortal. Zhang Xiaohua sighed with emotion. Moreover, after the imperial wind technique, there's the flight technique. How much people yearn for it. I suddenly thought of something. The 19 fragrant peaks are so far apart that it's difficult to even communicate with each other. Could it be that during the immortal Tao, the various peaks relied on flying techniques to move around? In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua seemed to see a scene of light shooting in all directions. "OMG," Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "What are you talking about? How can I believe in the Ranger biography? Even if I can master the flight technique, the journey from here to Shirxin Peak is more than 10 days. How can my true chi be enough? Sigh, I wonder if I'll be able to see second brother's figure on Shirxin Peak." At this time, Zhang Xiaohua wished she could grow a pair of wings and fly to Shirxin Peak. Calm down, calm down. Haste makes waste. As long as I'm in fragrant religion, I'll get the news of second brother sooner or later. Zhang Xiaohua comforted herself slowly. She knew that even if she could enter Wuming Hall and become an outer disciple, she would not have the opportunity to enter Shirxin Peak. On the contrary, she would fall into the eyes of some people, which would cause a certain difficulty in her actions. I, Xiaoxia, will never do things that make a fool of myself. Zhang Xiaohua said to herself, it's getting late. Let's see the elixir in the furnace. This is the first batch of elixir refined with the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. It must be successful. At least it'll be the best. Zhang Xiaohua went into the elixir room. Inside the elixir room, there was a faint medicinal fragrance. The earth fire under the elixir furnace was burning fiercely. The true samadhi fire in the elixir furnace was getting brighter and brighter. It surrounded the elixir liquid and burned it. The elixir liquid that was rotating very fast earlier gradually stopped and only rotated faintly. Zhang Xiaohua went to the elixir room and penetrated her divine sense into the elixir furnace. Seeing the elixir liquid, she was relieved. The 8 trigrams purple gold furnace was indeed a good thing. Just by looking at the rotation of the elixir liquid and the formation outside the elixir liquid, Zhang Xiaohua knew that the bone solidifying elixir only took 10 days to be refined. It was 3 days less than refining the pulse-nourishing elixir. In the process of refining the elixir, the changes of the elixir liquid were even more different than before. The elixir of the bone solidifying elixir was mixed together at the beginning like the pulse-nourishing elixir. The elixir of the 5 elements was mixed together, and the elixir of the 5 elements was gradually formed into a mature elixir. However, from the 2nd day onwards, the elixir of the 5 elements gradually became distinct and formed the shape of 2 small fish. Their heads and tails were connected and mixed together. The rotation of the elixir liquid was like 2 fish chasing each other. What made Zhang Xiaohua the most dumbfounded was that at the point where the 2 fish touched, there was actually a faint starlight. The starlight faintly showed signs of flowing, surrounding the 2 fish and constantly rotating. However, the starlight was so subtle that Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense could not see it clearly. However, for the 2 different elixirs, Zhang Xiaohua had a little idea in her heart. Within the heavenly way, Zhang Xiaohua knew that other than the Tao of the 5 elements, there was also the Tao of life and death, which was the Tao of yin and yang in Qi Huang. When these 2 different elixirs were first formed, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had also observed some clues. On one side of the elixir was the fragrant soul wood refined in the kin furnace, as well as the elixir from the Qian furnace, Gen furnace, and vibration furnace. On the other side, the elixir was the iron bone grass refined in the exchange furnace, as well as the elixir from the Kuan furnace, Sun furnace, and Li furnace. In other words, the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace's 8 trigrams could also be divided into 2 yin and yang. As the process of forming the elixir progressed, a small dot gradually appeared in the 2 fish-shaped elixirs, just like a fish's eye. The elixir in this small dot was the essence of the other elixir. These small dots of elixir were also wrapped in starlight. This made Zhang Xiaohua ponder deeply. Yin and yang were opposites, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. A solitary yang would not give birth, and a solitary yin would not grow. Only with yang and yang could it be the Tao of all things. And this elixir also went from medicinal herbs to elixir, from elixir to elixir, from elixir to elixir, from elixir to elixir, from elixir to elixir. It was precisely within the harmony of yin and yang, from nothing to something. This realization was akin to a bolt of lightning in Zhang Xiaohua's Tao heart, illuminating the heavenly Tao in Zhang Xiaohua's Tao heart. At that time, Zhang Xiaohua immediately sat down on the ground, no longer caring about the precious bone condensation pill in the cauldron in front of her, and directly comprehended this rare enlightenment. Before entering secluded meditation, Zhang Xiaohua habitually held the vitality stone in her hand. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation was still shallow. Although she was comprehending the heavenly Tao, it only took her 3 days to awaken from her secluded meditation. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation had taken a huge step forward, from the peak of the 6th layer of qi refining to the 7th layer of qi refining. However, a lot of the vitality in the vitality stone had been absorbed. Of the 18 layers of the Carefree Heart Sutra, the first 6 layers were for the initial stage of qi refining. As long as one could step into the threshold of qi refining and absorb enough vitality of heaven and earth, their cultivation would improve. From the 7th layer onwards, the role of one's temperament was highlighted. Progress at this time could not be made up by pure vitality of heaven and earth. Only when one's comprehension of the Heart Sutra made a breakthrough could one enter the next layer of cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua had already reached the peak of the 6th layer of qi refining when she was concocting pills in Rejuvenation Valley. However, the transition from the 6th layer to the 7th layer of qi refining was the transition from the initial stage of qi refining to the middle stage of qi refining. It was also the transition from quantitative cultivation to comprehension of the Heart Sutra. It was the most difficult transition. When the Tao of immortality was flourishing, who knew how many heavenly prodigies had broken through the threshold of qi refining, but they were stumped by this transition in comprehension, and their cultivation stagnated at the initial stage of qi refining for the rest of their lives. This could be considered the second great challenge of the Tao of immortality. Now that Zhang Xiaohua had obtained the 8 trigrams violet gold furnace, she had witnessed a new method of concocting pills. She had introduced the theory of the 8 trigrams into the 5 elements, and when she was gestating the pill, she had combined the yin and yang of the Tao of heaven, gaining a deep understanding of how yin and yang nurtured all living things. This understanding directly pushed her understanding of the Tao of heaven to a new level. Furthermore, she held a vitality stone in her hand, so her meridians very naturally drew a vast amount of vitality from the primal stones into her body. According to the Carefree Heart Sutra, her cultivation directly rose from the initial stage of qi refining to the middle stage of qi refining. This improvement seemed accidental, but it was actually inevitable. Zhang Xiaohua comprehended the Tao of heaven every day, absorbing the vitality from the vitality stones every night, and cultivating the Carefree Heart Sutra. She was accumulating every day, and with the accumulation of time, it was only a matter of time before she went from quantitative to qualitative. The gestating process of the 8 trigrams violet gold furnace was merely a catalyst. Of course, after emerging from closed-door cultivation, Zhang Xiaohua didn't have the time to check her cultivation. Instead, she hurriedly sent her spiritual sense into the furnace to check the medicinal liquid. Fortunately, apart from the tiny bit of medicinal liquid that had expanded countless times, almost half the size of the fish outside, there weren't many other changes. Only then did she check her cultivation and discover that she had actually advanced to the middle stage of qi refining. This made Zhang Xiaohua overjoyed. She immediately circulated her true qi through her brand new meridians a few more times. Only after she was completely familiar with it did she stop. In the next few days, it was the crucial moment for gestating the pill. Other than practicing the levitation technique and comprehending the Tao of heaven, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to distract herself with other matters. She even temporarily stopped practicing talismans and formations, afraid that she would enter closed-door cultivation again and miss the best opportunity to form the pill. As a matter of fact, after practicing her sword technique and testing the dragon binding hoop for a bit, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly returned to the furnace. At this moment, of the 2 fish-shaped medicinal liquids, the other type of medicinal liquid was almost as much as the previous type of medicinal liquid, each taking up half. Simply speaking, the composition of the 2 clumps of medicinal liquid was basically the same. There was only a slight difference, and this trace of medicinal liquid was all gathered at the edge of the 2 clumps of medicinal liquid, wrapped together by faint starlight. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua's expression turned solemn. He took a deep breath and circulated his true qi to his fingers. Both of his hands formed a series of hand seals and sent the final spell of the pill nurturing technique into the medicinal liquid. As the spell was sent in, the faint red true samadhi fire drilled into the medicinal liquid and burned toward the edges of the medicinal liquid. -3,